at this particular time, please? Anybody online for comments? Anybody else for comments? We'll go to approval of minutes, please. Motion, please, for the November 7th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you.
I will second that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any questions in regard to the motion on the floor? Let me read a synopsis of what was in there. In regard to last couple months we had, in regard to the resident asking in regard to the Hawthorne Drive and stop sign at Hawthorne and Juniper. I did talk to the Director of Public Works, and he has told me that starting next year, when we get into new budget, they will put the red markings below the stop sign on the pole itself to actually illuminate that you can see that. And throughout the summer, when they end up doing markings in the street and so on, they will put a double white line marking in that area so people can see that as such. So hopefully that will put us in the right direction. And if something needs to be done further, we'll go from there. Thank you for bringing our attention. There's a motion on the floor, Jolene, in regard to the minutes. Do you have any questions in regard to that? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you. At this time, Roman numeral number 5, Police Department reports, please.
The monthly report is attached. Nothing really out of the ordinary as far as activity goes. Still staying very busy with retail thefts, traffic and other items. I would like to point out some time ago I came and requested or just to give information on some PIT, which is pursuit intervention technique training that our officers were going to receive, which they did receive last summer. Since that time, we have successfully deployed the PIT technique 4 times to terminate high-speed pursuits. The last one happening just this last Saturday, where Officer Duker initiated a traffic stop. The driver became uncooperative, refused to leave the vehicle after being given multiple commands to exit the vehicle. At some point, the officer had to use a window punch to make entry into the driver's side of the vehicle. The driver accelerated away from the stop. The officer, given the speeds and traffic conditions, deemed that it was safe to use the PIT technique and was able to terminate the stop using that technique. Sometime after that, this is an email that I had just recently received, and I don't know if this is the same vehicle pursuit or a different one, but I thought it was just interesting. This was the grandmother of a suspect that we arrested. And she says, "I just wanted to say thank you for your kind words last night in the midst of the storm. I felt certain that you care about the things you deal with as a police lieutenant. I believe you have faith that what you do makes a difference. Your attitude can move mountains with a small whisper. You're a great police lieutenant. I hope you still worship with Crossway Church. That's an awesome church. Be safe, and may God continue to cover you and all your coworkers throughout this difficult and trying season. I pray that at the end of the workday, everyone gets to return home safely." That was kudos to Lieutenant Dan McCulloch. I just thought that was worthwhile to read at this meeting.
Thank you for bringing my attention. Both items, Chief. Anything else beside that?
No, sir.
Committee members, any questions to the Chief?
I have a comment.
Please.
That was great. We just had our luminary night last night in Winsong subdivision, and we asked for assistance in providing traffic, orderly traffic. So we had Ben come out, Officer Ben
Spitzer, sure.
Spitzer, come out, and he took care of the luminary night. We had 814 vehicles go through our subdivision. And I haven't gotten the totals of the cash that we received or the amount of boxes of food, but it's always a worthy cause. So thanks to the police department. We appreciate it.
Great, thank you. It was a good event. I went for the first time yesterday myself. Long line. Good for gas stations. Any other comments in regard to committee for the police chief? Seeing none? Fire, please.
Received. In addition to that, as you're looking at our monthly report, you can see that our response time was down a little bit, even though our call volume was not as high as it had been for the month of October. And that is due to multiple calls at the same time again.
Anything else, chief?
I don't have a lot prepared for you. I was out last week.
Yes, I do remember that. Very good. In your package, you also see what was requested by this committee in the past in regard to the police and fire department for overtime. Does anybody have any further questions in regard to these items before we go on further? I tell you what, as you're going through that as such, we'll go back to this if we can, and we'll just continue, okay? And that way you can ask your questions. Under C, there's no policy updates for police and fire. Going to new business A at this particular time. Denial of operator's license for Kathleen Reiser. Is Kathleen Reiser here this evening? Is not. Will somebody give us a report from the administration in regard to this, or can you, Deanna? Sorry.
I could fill you in if that is okay.
Thank you. That's good. Just looking for info.
Just more of a rules application than anything else. There is a conviction for a felony. That conviction happened back in 2009 for the theft of movable property. That was the only reason for the denial.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any comments from the committee, please?
What is your definition of movable? What did you say? 2009 was theft of movable.
It can cover a lot of things, but it was a felony conviction, so the dollar amount would have been substantial.
Can you define substantial for us, for those of us that,
Well, and now that has gone down to $500, but back in
Okay.
2009, that was significantly more. And I would be guessing, but I want to say $1,500 or more.
and that's in 2009 dollars, not 2022 dollars.
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
You guys know my position on this. I'm gonna still have that position. You can call me Dan Wing of the board if you need to, but the crime had nothing to do with alcohol. There's no reason to deny her. I understand what the rules state, that you have to automatically deny her for having a felony, but it had nothing to do with alcohol, and there should be no reason that she shouldn't be able to work at Big Boy.
Any other comments? Otherwise, I'll be looking for, go ahead.
Were there any other convictions or incidents in her report other than the 2009?
Non-criminal OWI back in 2007.
What does non-criminal mean? Oh, just,
That would have been a first offense municipally. Yeah.
Can I have a motion, please?
Yeah, and that was
If that be the case.
all.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve her license.
I'll second that motion.
Any further comments in regard to this? The only comment I would have is, in the past, we'd like to see the individual here to at least explain to herself and where she's now living in her life in regard to this. And I would imagine, Deanna, you sent the proper letters to the individual to have her come to this meeting. Thank you. Any further comments?
Would she have gotten a notice to appear in front of the village board as well? Right, so it would, both were correct. Got it.
I'm just stating this for the public.
Right.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
We have 3-1, motion passes. New business B, purchase of 2 police interceptor utility vehicles, excuse me. Chief?
We came with a similar request last year just because of the time that it's taken to order these squads. This just allows us to, just demonstrates that we have the approval to order the squads. It does not lock us into the purchase of the squads at this point. It just allows us to get that order process going. Total of the 2 squads is $85,334 that was approved in the 2023 budget.
And how much was approved in the 2023 budget? Is that the total of 87,880?
Yes. Plus the changeover was also approved for the 2023.
Okay, then I make a motion to approve new business item A. B, new business item B for the purchase of 2 interceptor utility vehicles.
Second that.
Very good. The only question I have is 2 things, actually. I would like to see when they have the vehicles in regard to this, Chief, if they would put down the year for these particular ones, and if you could just verbally give that.
Oh, the vehicles, squads being replaced, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, and I do not know the years on those vehicles. Typically, we've been going 3 years to replacement on them, but I would only be guessing.
Here again, I'm the only one who's requesting this. If you could give that to me in the future, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing is, I'm kind of stickler. I like to see where it's coming budget item per se, actually put in the actual motion so I can actually go back and actually see that. I've done this with GTF also in the past. You know, it's in the budget, but just to put it in there for record purposes, and for people who want to check back, they know where it came from the budget.
For the account?
Yes.
He did put that in.
Yeah, it's,
I didn't see that.
He put it in. In the attachment to the agenda, he has that in there.
think he has
the
a-
budget number.
yeah, he has under account 40521578510.
I apologize to you in regard to that. I guess I oversaw that. But anyhow, if you could just give me the information in regard to the years, I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Any other?
So the years are in there too. It says 2023.
Well, that's the year that they want to get. I want to know what year they were originally purchased, Phil.
Replacing,
Oh, what they're replacing. Thank you.
Gotcha.
and maybe miles.
Well, I don't care about the miles. The miles is usually over 125,000, I would imagine. So
What happens to the vehicles that you're replacing? Your mic's off.
The last few years, we've actually sold them at auction. If the village has a need for the vehicles, they would take the squads, but we're turning them over at such high mileage typically that they, for all practical purposes, are, at the end of their use.
any other questions? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. I see, Chief, you're up again for number 3 for the cameras, please.
Yeah, and this one is a bit more involved. We were contacted by Axon recently their concern is our current contract lease with them for the squad cameras goes through 2023. We are under contract with that. We have that money in the 2023 budget. They are looking for agencies to commit to a contract starting in 2024, specifically because it's taking so long to get the cameras for starters. It's taken over 12 months to get those cameras. They could start the order if this is approved. The other issue is starting in 2023, there will be a 13% increase in the price of those fleet cameras. Approving this now, and again, we would be looking to approve another 5-year contract starting in 2024. This would allow us to lock into current 2020 prices. Those prices are still more than what we paid the last time, because back in 2018, I believe, the different technology, the new cameras have the ELPR system, which is similar to what our flock cameras use to recognize license plates and provide information based off license plates. The new cameras will have that feature. So the price per year does go up. It goes up about $5,500 from what we are paying now. And that would be $5,500 per year through the life of the contract.
Does that lock us in for going forward, or because you said
It
we got a
does.
new
It's
contract going forward?
I think I attached the contract, and that pretty much outlines what we would be paying starting in 2024.
They ask Walmart to pay for it?
We, certainly we can look for different grants that are out there. I take that back. The first grant was for body worn cameras that we received. There was not one for these cameras, but there's always grants that we can apply toward different initiatives, but it's hard to say what grant would be available at that time to apply toward that.
And are they still as useful today as they were before?
It's just hard to imagine us doing our job as effectively as we do it without those cameras. It's something we just really have become to rely on. Very useful to us in demonstrating during pursuits that our officers are conducting themselves the way they should be. It registers speed and all kinds of useful information to us. Has been useful in court and useful in defending our officers, quite frankly, on a number of different occasions.
I would think it would make a difference also in regard to detective times, in regard to doing research and so on. You have all this information right in front of you, which makes probably a faster disposition of each particular case.
Sure.
Any other questions? Yes, Phil?
So these are fleet cameras, not flock cameras, right? So the flocks are the ones that are in the public spaces, and these are mounted in patrol cars. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And then, so if I'm understanding their price increase correctly, it looks to me like they've got a 19, excuse me, I apologize. They've got a 19.83% price increase every year already baked into the price that they want to give us. And they're telling us that it's also going to go up another 5%. So they're looking at a 24% price increase to their customers.
Well, this
Correctly?
this increased price is in part because it's a different camera than we're using now.
So it's an upgrade in addition to a price increase.
Yeah, and this does not reflect the 13% increase that we would see if we waited till 2023, to the end of 2023 to sign another contract.
So if we stayed with the same camera, which there would be no price increase. The increase that we're paying is due to the increased quality of the equipment. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct, but that camera we use now won't be available.
So they're discontinuing the camera
Correct.
and saying you got to buy the more expensive one.
Yes.
That's what Apple does. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm done. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Do we have a motion on the floor? I'm sorry to say that.
I'll make a motion to. Here. I'll make a motion to approve the contract from Axion to lease 14 fleet cameras.
I'll second.
Any further comments? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Committee members, under new business D, have you had a chance to look at the police and fire overtime? Because that's the next thing on the agenda. Let me pose some other questions that you had originally a couple meetings back also.
So we don't have 2021 on here. Or I don't think we do.
No, according to the top, it shows 2022. So were you looking for yourself, or were you looking for 2021 also? So you could compare?
It's hard to draw any conclusion from data that's, 2 years old in the midst of a pandemic. I'd be very careful about using 2020 data, because that's a odd year. And then we would go back to 2019 if that's the data we're looking at, and that's 3 years ago. I'd be very hesitant to draw any conclusions with data that's that old. But that's me.
Any other comments by the committee in regard to that same issue?
Do you have the updated year-to-date?
Yeah, 2022 is in there.
Oh.
Can you tell us what OT comp, please, is? I get OT paid. That's dollars paid for OT.
Comp pay is time they have taken as time off as opposed to as time and a half. So they worked overtime, but they put that time into a bank, use as time off, as opposed to being paid out.
They
It's
put,
actually cheaper.
yeah. So we have to add the two numbers together?
Divide? What are we doing?
Yes, adding the two numbers together would give us a better picture.
I think that was something that was changed in the contracts maybe about 3 years ago. Would that be somewhat correct? Steve, if you remember, in regard to overtime?
No, that's been standard practice for full-time fire
part-time?
department as long as I've been with the department.
That's the same for you, Chief Snow?
That's correct. They are allowed to bank the overtime and they are allowed to cash out on the overtime in June or December, which a number of them do. They can cash out on up to 40
Yeah.
hours, but we are seeing a kind of a change in trend of younger officers taking the majority to pay as opposed to comp. That's one of the issues that's impacting us as well.
Is it a real hassle to get 2021 numbers or no?
And I do have the 2021 numbers that Paula had prepared. For police, we were at $131,568.24.
On the paid, right?
Correct.
And comp was what? Do you know?
And that we were not tracking after these reports. We weren't tracking the comp. It's something we had discussed about bringing back, but at some point we discontinued this report back in 2020. That was just had a little bit more information on it.
Is that ratio pretty uniform? 2 to 1? ballpark?
Yeah, I think so.
So we'd be looking at 67.5 on the comp? Is that a fair estimate?
I would only be guessing, but I think it's probably a fairly good estimate. I think those trends have been similar the last couple years.
John, would you have anything on 2021?
I do not have anything on 2021.
Okay. Committee, would you like to see this put on the agenda for next month? We'll go through this again?
I'd like to see it every month, just the reports of the overtime and comp.
I'd like to look at these numbers for a little bit and talk about it again, maybe next month. I don't want to suggest anything that's foolhardy here.
Let's put this on agenda for next month to go through this. Now, there's another request by Jolene. You wanted to see this every month?
Yeah, I'd like to,
Any problem, chiefs?
I'd just like to see the continuing, if we
And
could
give
have
us
it
the
broken
whole year.
down maybe monthly for 2022 and ongoing years forward. Just.
You get the
you know,
numbers
so-
anyway, right?
So we're meeting in December, so for November, this is how many hours we had for overtime. This is how many hours we had for comp. Just to keep us updated going forward.
Sure.
Is that a lot of trouble or no?
I mean, and we had talked with Paula a couple weeks ago, and she had something in mind to prepare something with the overtime in addition to the comp. So I think she's already got something in the works.
Can we get numbers on this stuff too, or is that, and again, I'm not looking to drive you guys batty.
What,
Hours, number of hours to generate the pay. You know, so we
Yeah, I
spent $10,000 and it was two,
X amount of hours, sure.
whatever it was.
I did want to point out that when you're looking back at this report, that for the fire department, that the greater full-time staffing did not start until 2019. So prior to that, you're gonna have different numbers.
Jump data. Thank you.
Like I say, on John, if you just want to take the 2021, use that as an example. God bless you. Okay, then we'll have this offered next month, starting next month, and then go forward each month thereafter. Is that all right, committee?
Me,
Yes.
even if it's not even put on the agenda, if it's just included in your monthly reports, that's
Right.
Just
completely fine with me.
maybe, or just have a separate sheet, just like you have here. Just do the same thing for the overtime. That'd be fine.
Yeah, I think that's what it was in the past, and it was just under the same
Right.
as monthly reports.
It was under this format.
Any other questions at this time? Otherwise, we'll continue this next month. Seeing none, let's go on to new business E. Agenda request by Jan Miller and for River Bend, north of County Q, requesting stop signs for business approaching River Bend Road, another solution. Tree removal for oncoming traffic. You want to give some input, Jan and Phil,
Sure.
please?
I received an email from our resident Cynthia Schwartz in Rivers Bend condominium area. And she had some safety concerns. She just moved there, but recently on October 31st, unsafe driving practices by customers utilizing the businesses on the east and west sides of Rivers Bend, which connects the development to county line. And frequently there are customers exiting Speedway, Panda Express, the hotel, and they don't pay any attention to the southbound traffic. So this is off of County Q. Rivers Bend is where the old golf course was behind McDonald's and that hotel, and Buffalo Wild Wings right in there. So there's a connecting road called Rivers Bend, and they come out of their subdivision, and they're trying to head south to county line. So it's up on their road, and they're trying to go, they're making a right-hand turn, they're going southbound. So the traffic north of there, which would be River Crest area, the River Crest offices, they're just, coming down real fast. There's other office buildings up there, but that's the furthest north, I think. So they're coming down and they're not yielding in any way. And there's a tree apparently at their stop sign that obscures the view of the southbound traffic coming from River Crest and those areas. So that's what she wanted to know, if there was something that could be done. In addition to that, there's, they don't even look. There are a couple of, there's another connecting road, Chief, the road that comes off of McDonald's, actually. It's like off a queue. It's a parallel, it's almost like a frontage road. I don't even know if that road has a name.
Emmer Drive?
Yes, yes. Does that have any yield? It's quite confusing. I haven't know.
There's a stop sign on the corner as you were looking across. I think if that's the area you're talking about, by McDonald's, there's a stop sign on that corner there, which is to the right of that would be Wendy's.
Yeah. Is that stop sign? Yeah. Yeah. But for them to get across and to the left and head south, make a left-hand turn there, that's pretty precarious. But anyway, the stop signs, she wanted to add from the traffic from the north, as well as removal of that curbside tree, so that they could see any traffic coming. The other concern was just pedestrian access to the businesses on the south side of County Line and the west side of Appleton Avenue and County Line.
That's a different agenda.
I was going to say, that's a different one,
Oh,
isn't it?
okay.
That
So
was just
this
under
is-
E.
This is the first one. So it's really asking for perhaps a stop sign and
Tree removal.
Tree removal.
Well, what I would suggest in regard to this would be that we go with the Public Works Director,
Yeah.
Jan and myself, and we go in and look in this area and get a good perspective in regard to this and listen to whatever Scott tells us in regard to his thoughts in regard to this area. Does that seem all right, committee? And then,
That's
and then we'll bring this back to the next meeting, also put that on the agenda. Is that all right, committee members? Okay,
that's fine. We can move it to the public.
let's go to new business F. This would be, again, Jan and Phil. Whoever wants.
County Line Road isn't our road though. That's a county one.
The only thing I'll make a comment, County Line Road and Appleton Avenue, all those situations in there by me, excuse me, by McDonald's, Taco Bell, and so on and so forth, is very confusing. So I would say before we even get into this, that we also bring that discussion with, excuse me, Jan, myself, and Scott, and then report back to this committee next month. This does, because you are right. There's a lot of different areas on there. Sometimes it's Washington County. Some of it is Germantown. Some of it
So
is
that-
Waukesha County.
That's one of our questions.
Yeah, and we'll try to pinpoint exactly all the way from, in fact, we can maybe go from Maple going eastbound on County Line Road in regard to who owns whatever sections, going all the way up until the stop, to the expressway. Does that sound reasonable, committee?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's in regard to pedestrian crossing.
We'll go through the whole thing in regard to identifying,
Whose ownership it is.
Chief, please.
I guess it would just be my recommendation is to save another meeting, if you will, if it's going to be a signage issue of clearing brush, debris, something like that, that it would go to the Department of Public Works. I can be there to offer any insight I might have, but ultimately, if it's a signage issue, they're going to have to make some determination on that.
Our administrator put out a email in regard to that situation. And looking under the code, it's not really clear in regard to, because it talks about both departments and such, but I'll have a discussion in regard to our administrator in regard to this. So if nothing else, at least if nothing else, if what I'm saying is correct, maybe we're going to have a change in the code so we have more direction for everybody going forward.
Yeah, and in the past, just for a little historic perspective, we did maintain the traffic map. That was changed so that it was placed with DPW, just because of the issues of signage and rules that they're just more versed in than us. And I don't know and the ordinance was changed, but it still did leave the option to come through public safety. I understand that.
Yeah.
But I think, they have some insight that really needs to be considered in regards to these issues.
Here again, I'll speak to the administrator in regard to that as such. It's hard to determine. I mean, you look at public safety, that's talking about a lot of different areas as such too, but whatever.
Yeah,
It's
and
not,
certainly
it's not
we're,
tonight though.
yeah, certainly where she's talking about issues of drivers, erratic driving, things of that nature, that we should certainly be involved in, and that can be her just calling us. But yeah, that's.
Thank you for the insight, Chief. Appreciate that. So E and F will also be discussed further in next month's meetings as such. I see Jan and Phil, you have another one for new business G.
Yes.
Is it somewhat of the same? No, this is a different area. You've got Pilgrim here, right?
This is a different area.
Yes, please.
This might be, being worked on right now, but I don't know what the timeline is. This was brought up by Principal Tony Gonzalez at MacArthur Elementary.
Yes,
And he wanted to know if we could put up flashing yield signs on Pilgrim Road between Mequon and County Line. And he's just seen too many pedestrians playing Frogger and traffic not yielding to pedestrians. So he yields to them, but others don't. So this is on Pilgrim between Mequon and County Line.
where it meets with Fond du Lac.
Yes.
So is
Mequon and County Line. Mequon and
oh,
County Line.
going the opposite direction. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
2 miles.
Yeah, it's 2 miles.
Yeah. So you'd have
there's
Dodges Bay in between as
Yes.
the only stops light.
Dodges Bay and County Line. So,
Is she talking?
obviously, that there is a school in.
Yes.
And does it make sense for them to try and put some kind of a crosswalk going to that road?
So are you talking about north now?
From County Line on Pilgrim Road, going,
But County Line, are you talking about County Line Elementary or MacArthur from where the email came?
he just drives this way.
I
So this is
think,
what he's observing.
well-
He wrote it.
I've had
I wrote-
5 kids go through County Line and I've never let one of my children cross Pilgrim Road when they've been going to that school, ever.
Wow. That's a testimonial.
Well, I'm just
I mean,
saying,
it's
they're
crazy.
elementary kids and they should not be crossing any road like that by themselves at all, ever, in my opinion.
But if you're walking your kids,
Yeah, then that, yeah.
No,
that's
I
different.
don't think the point is children. I think the point is the speeds on Pilgrim Road between County Line and Mequon Road
Yeah.
too.
are stunning. I we drive that all the time. And I will tell you that 50 and 55 miles an hour on Pilgrim Road is a very regular occurrence. And as was pointed out, there is one stoplight between County Line
Yeah,
and
Dungeons
and
Bay.
Mequon, right? And those are, so it's a mile from County Line to Donges, and then it's another mile from Donges Bay to Mequon Road. And people fly through there all the time. That's what that's what the principal is attempting to address.
Chief Snow, could you have maybe one of your people be in one of those side streets or whatever to do some speed checking, please?
We can. We will make every effort. Though I will tell you, the traffic posts become more and more problematic as far as the timing and committing an officer there for any extended period of time. So sometimes the information we have is not as valuable as it could be, but we will make every effort that we can, certainly. But so and this discussion has come up in the past. There's discussions about putting something in the area of School Road, but just crossing Pilgrim Road in general, other than at a intersection, is going to be a hazard.
I was going to say in Milwaukee, at least in my time, they used to have crossing guards in regard to that during the school hours. But here again, I think I heard some committee members say it's not just with the kids, it just could be with anybody. But certainly with children, I'd like to be able, if you want to do some checking, that's fine. I would like to maybe speak to the principal there and find out just exactly how many kids are actually walking to school, which would have to go east off of Pilgrim.
Arthur's different.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm only talking about from County Line to Dodges Bay, that particular area. Because when you go from when you go to Dodges Bay
Just saying,
to
I
Mec,
don't think kids walk home from elementary school
I
across
just-
Pilgrim. I don't think.
see, I don't really know that. And all I'm saying is I would check with the principal and get some idea. And-
Well,
and-
if any pedestrian, if they're walking or biking, the only way they can cross is to go to the intersection safely. I mean, cross safely.
Well, that's what they should do anyhow, to be honest with you.
But
But it's a mile.
it's a mile.
No, I know.
And you've got Crossway Church there, which is really, really busy.
Yeah.
And then just south of there, you've got businesses, plus you have the school.
But if you put in a blinking crosswalk
Like,
where it
right.
forces cars to stop, especially
Right.
with Crossway being there, you're asking for a whole lot of accidents. I mean, people are gonna be rear-ending each other. There's gonna be an increase in accidents. It's gonna be kind of havoc.
I think, well, basically speaking, just let's do a little more checking in regard to this and get some ideas from the police department. Well, I understand cost, but right now we're not really looking at any particular thing. But I mean, realistically, you look at what is the cost of a life or injury of somebody. So, but whatever, let's just do some checking in regard to this and get some additional information. So I guess we can put this on the agenda for next month. We got a good agenda going next month.
So
Yes.
just for clarification, you're looking at just speed checks
Just speed
along
checks.
Pilgrim Road? Because I can tell you, as Trustee Hudson said, over the last 30 years, typically speeds are anywhere from 40 to 50 miles an hour on Pilgrim Road. It's the design of the road. It's not a boulevard. It just
Straight.
encourages
Yep.
fast driving.
Strip.
Right.
It's a drag strip, and it's in decent shape.
Yeah. So,
We don't have the natural barriers on Division,
Right.
right.
that we do.
Very good. I think we're covered on this particular
I think the
item.
gentleman would like to say something.
Oh, it's our
Yeah.
administrator.
Mr. Chair, if I could just interject. One other suggestion on this is to maybe have Public Works take a look at this as well. It wasn't focused on Pilgrim Road, but some of you may recall a few years ago, we did a study, the Saxony Village Connectivity Study that looked at some of the intersections on Mequon Road. and where there's some of the same issues, and made some design recommendations about how to make it safer for pedestrians. And I think some of those things would probably apply to Pilgrim Road as well. And I think as you look at particularly pedestrian safety, what the traffic engineers are more often than not going to say, it's solved through design changes as opposed to signage, or even enforcement. And one of the things that comes to my mind when you talk about the yellow flashing lights, I think it was just a few years ago in Mequon, on Mequon Road, where there was a pedestrian fatality, where somebody stepped out into the yellow lights, one car stopped, and another car went around, and killed a pedestrian who was crossing at the yellow flashing lights. So those aren't a panacea either. That it's something to be concerned about.
Let me give you another issue that I have myself, going to St. Pius Church in Wauwatosa on 76th Street. There's a school up on 76th and North, you're familiar, maybe not committee members. And then there's another one at St. Pius, and then the Lutheran Church there. And they put those yellow lights there as such. And to walk across that street, if you're not looking, even though they have lights before and then at the intersection itself, you're in trouble. You're not going to make it because 76th Street is a thoroughfare road going through. But you're right in regard to that. But because we're going to be talking on this issue, but thanks for bringing that up. But if, Police Chief, if you would go through that, so we can, if nothing else, report to Public Works Committee also in regard to that. They'd had that information too, so.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you all. Appreciate that. We're at the end for our next meeting. Let's have a discussion in regard to, I did speak to Jolene this morning in regard to this that January 2nd is an off day as such, which would be the first one. I'd like to have our meeting on January 9th at 6. I think yours is at, Jan, you and Jolene are at 5:30, is that correct?
So
So if we could have,
we're waiting for it to be confirmed. So I think we're just waiting to hear back from another committee member, right?
I was just trying to do what we've been always doing where we're here for the evening. Let's have 2 meetings at one time unless somebody tells me we go in a different direction, but we've always done it that way. That's why I was trying to talk about January 9th.
I think there's another meeting.
Yes, there is the planning commission, but we would be in that side room. I wanted to mention that also. In the conference room in here. We would not be on the air per se for that particular part, but I'm not opposed to that for one particular meeting. It's the only time we ever had that problem was in January anyhow, usually. Especially when we have, when you have Christmas and January 1st, that, where they fall. They fall on the Sundays.
Saying start at 6.
Start at 6. And if you're not done at 6, Phil and I will wait in that room until you're done. Is that all right, Phil? Does that work all right for you, Phil? Appreciate your efforts, everybody, in regard to this. Otherwise, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Ready. I'd like to call this meeting to order, a regular meeting of the Village Board on Monday, December 5th at 7 PM in the Germantown Village Hall Boardroom and can also be accessed via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all village board members present. At this time, I'll ask us all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, justice for all. Thank you. Next item is President's Report. I have nothing to report tonight, so we can go to announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee and department reports with committee chairs, starting with Trustee Kaminsky.
Public Works will meet in this room this upcoming Wednesday at 5:30 PM.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Rick Miller.
General Government and Finance. Hello. General Government and Finance will meet on Monday, December 19th at 6 PM
All
in
right.
this room.
Thank you. Trustee Myers.
Mr. President, Public Safety will meet on January 9th, 2023 at 6 PM in this conference room behind me.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have anything else for announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee or department reports? Trustee Pieper.
Meow, I just wanted to say how excited I am about the Public Works building that is being built. The groundbreaking was on Friday, and I'm super excited for the Public Works employees to have a safe place to work that is not being fined by the DNR. And it was very exciting to be there on Friday and be a part of that process. And I'm even more excited about what is to come of our recycling center in our downtown.
Thank you for that.
Mr. President?
Yes,
I will-
Trustee Myers.
I will Echo those same comments.
That you were also present at the groundbreaking?
I was.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Anything else for announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee or department reports? Trustee Jan Miller.
I'd just like to announce that we had our luminary night last night, and I'd like to thank the police department and Officer Ben for making sure that the traffic went in and out of our subdivision, which is 1.25 miles about, safely. We had 815 cars go through our subdivision for luminary night. I don't have the dollar total or food total that goes to the St. Boniface pantry, but we'll have that information soon. So thank you to our police department.
And you've been in that neighborhood for a while, Jen. How many years has that been going on?
28 or 29 years.
Another longstanding holiday event within our village, one that is very well participated by, but also supports a great cause as well. So congratulations to your neighborhood for putting on a successful event again that all the people can participate in. And I'm sure families bring their kids there, and now you probably have it for that many years. It's generational.
Yes, we have Mr. and Mrs. Santa at the front. They hand out candy canes. We even had little dog treats for people that you stay in your car and drive around. So, and by the way, Lynn Gergerich was the family that started the event.
Oh, yeah, way back when. I remember, when she was in that neighborhood. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, there's a lot of those coming up, a lot of different events. That's a good one to kick off. You got Breakfast with Santa that the Kiwanis put on that is very well participated in, very popular. So please keep your eyes out. And there is also a message board in front of Village Hall that tries to announce as many of those as they possibly can. But it's always a lot of great events coming on in the holiday for people to participate and choose which ones they'd like to participate in to kind of make their holiday special. So thank you, your neighborhood, for putting on yours. Any other announcements? If there aren't any more, we can go then to citizen input and public appearance on items that are not subject to a public hearing. There are no public hearings on tonight's agenda. So if there is anyone within our audience or joining us via WebEx that would like to participate in citizen input or public appearance, you're welcome to do so at this time. If you're within our audience, please come forward to the microphone and state your name and your address for the record. And if you're joining us via WebEx, please make your wishes known so that the moderator can make sure that you are recognized and brought forward to make your comments. We are having a 3-minute time period on this, and we'll start the timer as soon as the person starts talking. So if there's anyone that wishes to come forward for citizen input or public appearance, you're welcome to do so now. Anyone wishing to come forward?
Melanie Smythe, N140W17938. Good evening. I mostly have some questions tonight in regards to the agenda item to do with the real estate purchase of 2 pieces of property, one on Main and one along Fond du Lac. And I just curious as to why this is happening now when the market is at its peak coming down. If we waited 6 months, maybe we'd get a better deal. What about the 2050 plan and the village center study that's underway? Wouldn't it be better to wait until we knew what we wanted to do with the general area? I've seen over the last 9 months of following events in the village, sort of a pattern of overpaying for property. And that's because the village is really not a developer. It's not really supposed to be. It's supposed to be a village, and the developers are supposed to do the development. And I think it's great for the sellers, but not for the taxpayers. So I was wondering, is there a developer associated with this? And if there's not, why are we locking up a piece of property, 2 pieces of property in the liability column for the village, which cost money in insurance, and it takes it off the revenue rolls, so you don't get any taxes from it, as I understand it. And why would there be a TID? And why now? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with this village center. There's studies that are going to be happening. There's other things that need to happen with the 2050 plan and our crack planning team over here. You know, the value of this is slightly under $1.2 million, which is more debt for the village. We've already just got, I don't know, 45 million in bonds and general liabilities or set up. It just doesn't make any sense at this stage. It's a timing thing. I'm not against it in general, but I just think that the order of this is out of place, especially when the market values are going down. And one tip, you know, normally in order to not overpay, you use a confidential agent, and that's someone who doesn't have a Village of Germantown jacket on or drives one of the cars, and they go in and they do the negotiations. So whether the property owner came to you or you went to the property owner, I don't know the background behind that, but I'm not against the fact of the village working with developers to tie up property, but I think it should be the developer that owns the property, not the village. Other related, but not directly related questions. When will the neighborhood meetings be scheduled? And just to reiterate, I'm against the purchase at this time and a TID being put together, which is one of the contingencies in the real estate deal. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance?
Good evening, Scott Heffley, W159 and 10514 Old Farm Road, Germantown. 3 quick points tonight. I was here for the last meeting, and I would ask this board to find a way to have a streamlined process to handle resident issues. What I witnessed last time was, in my opinion, unconscionable to drag this lady through a process, and a lot of kudos to trustee Pieper and trustee Jan Miller, who stuck up for this lady and got her here, but we ran her through the ringer, in my opinion, for 45 minutes. Cross-examined, Spanish Inquisition, Salem witch trial, whatever you want to use. I'm telling you, that was painful to watch, horrible. And if that's the way we treat our residents when they come up and ask probably very little, if nothing, in their life from this village, that's no way to treat people. That's my opinion. So there has to be a way to do the work before they come here and get run through the ringer. And that's why a lot of people don't come here with issues. And I think everybody up there knows that. So kudos to trustee Miller and trustee Pieper for sticking up for one of their own. I really appreciate that. So getting to the village center, you know, I went over all of this. So I've met with a couple of you on the board away from the meeting. And Scott, would you support a TID if we needed one to put the village center together? And I said, probably, but I'd have to see the master plan of what we're doing. And now I see there's a discussion to purchase properties, that the village is looking to be a buyer on properties. I know you can't talk about it, closed session. Why would we own properties and borrow money on bonds to buy properties and open a TID? None of those lead to any revenues. You lose the revenues on the stuff going into the TID, and there we sit, and we're going to develop it. Why are we rushing? Now, if there's information which you can't share, which there is, but I'm only going off what I see a discussion to purchase properties that the village is looking to on Fond du Lac and also on Main Street. And what are we doing with that? And if we're borrowing money to be a landlord, why would we do that? We keep hearing how the budget is tight, yet we just keep going out and borrowing more money, because it does say 2023 borrowing issue that you have yet to discuss. So if you're going to go out and borrow money to purchase these properties, why would you do that when your budget, by all accounts, is flawed and you know it? So TIDs, you know, you've opened 4 TIDs in 5 years, 4 TIDs in 6 years, looking for a contingency of the sale. According to what I saw in the follow down, drop down information that you all have, is a contingency of the sale between the village buying property is the opening of a TID. If that is wrong, then it needs to be stricken from the record. If it is right, then that's what I'm going off of. Page 234, for those of you following along. Finally, I only have 10 seconds. The budget's still not complete. When is the Baker Tilly audit? When is the unaudited surplus going to be handled? What is the update on accounting entries? I would like a monthly update on how we're doing all those things from Mr. Kreckler. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for public input? Citizen input or public appearance? Is there anyone joining us via WebEx? All right. Is there anyone else within our audience that would like to come forward for citizen input or public appearance? Yes, ma'am. Hi.
My name is Deborah Hembrook, North 128, West 17358, Holy Hill Road. I'm here to support the expansion of Appleworks Winery. Kevin and Lisa value, honor, and respect the rich history of the property. My husband and I were there recently, and we sat at a table where there are photos of where the original property, what it looked like. And Kevin came over and he was telling us all about the buildings, including the old house where the future bed and breakfast would possibly be. He's very invested in the property and very proud of the homestead that they have created and the winery. And more importantly, they are invested in the people that come in there. Every single person that comes in there, they greet. They come and visit with them at the table. They find out their names and what they do. And they share so much about Germantown and about the community of Germantown and how this property has grown. The space they've created to host family and friends is beautiful. The design is unique and a wonderful extension of the winery. The ceiling chandeliers and seating is made out of wood from wine barrels. It really takes your breath away. The extension of the winery is a place where celebrations would take place, such as retirements, weddings, birthdays, baby showers, wedding showers, and maybe a Christmas party. Do we want families to go to a different community for these events? That just might happen. This is a beautiful space. Please allow Kevin and Lisa to live their joy and passion and share that joy and passion with our Germantown community and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jerry Schuster. I live at W180 North 12537 Fond du Lac Avenue. It's kitty corner from the winery that she just so eloquently spoke about. I'm a retired registered nurse, and I've lived here in Germantown for over 40 years, and I love our community and how it's grown. And I feel that this winery is a beautiful condition, to bring our community even more together. I've met some wonderful people over there. Since the winery started in 2016, we've lived in our home across the street for the past 20 years. So they were new to us. I've not noticed any increased traffic, and I've not noticed any increased noise. If I'm out in the garden and I hear they have live music maybe once a month. And if I hear it, it's like, oh, I better go over there and listen to the music because it's really well done. Noise is not an issue for us at all, and we are very close to them. And like she said, I enjoy the friendly atmosphere, and Kevin and Lisa and their daughter, they're just such a wonderful addition to our community. So I'm in favor of this addition of everything that's happening. Thanks.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance?
My name is Vern Ellert. I'm from Jackson. I don't know, do you need my address? Is that what you're looking for?
If you could, please, that would be great.
West 197 North 17131 Stonewall Drive. I'm also in support of the expansion for the winery. It's a place that we've been going for the last number of years. It's a environment that is unique to this community. There's no other place in the area that you're going to find a family run who live on the property, take the time to really get to know people. There's no Wi-Fi there. It's designed to be a communication place where you sit down, you enjoy yourself, you get to know other people, you talk with other people. This is the environment that they're trying to put into your community and continue to grow in your community, which is, I think, a very positive thing for Germantown. So I would just like to say that I also would improve the environment is a great thing to do. And I think it's a community-based environment. It's almost like a coffee house, only it's a winery. So if anybody hasn't been there, I would suggest going there and seeing this environment yourself. It's a very welcoming place. I've got to know a lot of people. I count them as my friends that I've gotten to know that I've visited there, and then just be communications. So that's what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance?
I'm Jenna Crucial. I live at West 177 North 12581 Apple Blossom Lane. I live there with my husband Sam and our 2 young children. We're the closest neighbor to the winery, and we oppose of the winery. We purchased our lot in 2018. We purchased it from Mr. Benke. The lot was vacant. We built our home on it. We purchased the property under the advertisement of it being quiet and private. At the time we purchased it, we were never told that he wanted to expand his winery operations or open an event space. Had we known that, we would not have purchased our property. Our first concern relates to the noise that that expanding into a venue such as the event space will generate. As I said, we have young children, our neighbors have young children, and while it doesn't appear that close from some of the pictures that were presented last meeting, our home is very close. For those of you who have stopped by in the past, it is very close. The tasting room is further from our home than the event space, and when they do have music, we still hear the music. Mr. Benke said in November, at the November hearing, that he hasn't received any noise complaints from the police. Now, that's an argument that I sincerely have difficulty with because I think that it puts the action item on the neighbors and not the business owner. Nonetheless, on May 13th of this year, I did contact the winery. I also emailed the board president regarding a noise complaint regarding the winery. I didn't contact the police in May. I'd tried to avoid making a noise complaint to the police, but I will do so in the future if that's what it takes. The winery currently closes at 8, is open 4 days a week, and live music is typically limited to 1 day a week. I don't know about 1 day a month, but it's 1 day a week. The new hours of operation with the event space would expand that and allow music until 10. Even if it's only allowing music until 6 on weekdays, my husband and I work from home a lot of times, so that would be disruptive to us when we're working from home. Just wanted to remind everybody that when the winery was established, commitments were made to the neighbors. We weren't neighbors at that time, but we did purchase the land under the commitments that were in place. And I understand that Mr. Benke has installed sound detectors around the property, and he communicated that there was nothing that came up since he's installed it. I just want to point out that any results to date on the sound monitoring are irrelevant. The noise being monitored is that of a 50-person max capacity tasting room that closes at 8. The tasting room is not subject to this vote. The expansion to having an event space with 125 more people on the property, plus employees, plus 30 to 50 more vehicles on the property, and expanded hours of operation are what is being voted on. None of what has been monitored to date or what anybody else has talked about to date is relevant because it does not relate to the noise that would come from an expanded venue. And when I refer to noise, I don't only mean music, I mean noise of the patrons, people hanging out outside during the venue or during the event, or the windows or doors being open because it's too warm inside. This happens all the time at venues like this. Even if the music is kept inside, it's not going to stop people from opening up the doors and hanging out during the event. Mr. Benke's current residence is closer to the building than our home, but if he does build a new property, I am curious as to whether our home will now become the closest home to the event space. I also have concerns for the additional traffic this expansion will lead to. While it's speculative to say that the traffic will occur on our private drive, I do see that there will be increased traffic on Highway 145. The clientele at the tasting room and the drinking activity at the tasting room is limited to what you would expect of a boutique winery, but expanding into an event space changes the nature of the clientele, whether they're family, friends, businesses. It doesn't matter. The amount of drinking that will happen will increase. Whether hard liquor is involved or not, the parties that will happen there will lead to higher amounts of alcohol consumption, and this impacts the safety of my family and the neighbors. Just to be clear, my husband and I are firmly against the event space, and I'd like you to imagine yourselves in our shoes. Imagine purchasing land from someone living next door, land that was advertised as quiet and private, and then imagine that individual opening up an event space that changes the nature of the business, triples the current capacity on the property, extends the hours of operation, and is a space that'll lead to higher alcohol consumption. And remember that this business owner previously profited on the sale of the property when you purchased it from him. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance?
Good evening. I'll try and keep it in the 3 minutes, but I hope you'll oblige me a little extra if I go over. My name is Kirk Will. I live at W177 N12604 Apple Blossom Lane. I am the second closest residence to the proposed wedding venue. I've lived at the property since 2009 when my family bought the 5-acre parcel from Mr. Benke and built a home. I lived there with my wife and 2 young children. 2 years ago, some of you will remember me, I spoke against the wedding venue then, and I'm here to speak against it once again. I watched a video of the Plan Commission meeting several weeks ago where I believe it was Trustee Baum who stated that in 2020, there was a lot more people voicing their opposition against the wedding venue in person. Just want you to know I wrote a letter for the Plan Commission meeting because in 2020 I was working day shift and could easily come to the meetings. I'm supposed to be at work right now, and this is my second last vacation day of the year to be here tonight. At the Plan Commission meeting and again here tonight, you'll notice that except for 2 people ago, none of the people speaking in support of the expansion live anywhere near it. And I guess the handy thing about cell phones is even the person here tonight lives well over double the distance away than the Crucials. In fact, Trustee Miller spoke at the Plan Commission meeting in favor of the expansion as she did in 2020. I find it somewhat ironic because Trustee Miller also spoke adamantly against the Viridian home proposal that same year, was essentially in her backyard. I guess it's a little bit different when it's in your own backyard. So I'd ask you and the council to look at it from the viewpoint of if you'd want a wedding venue 400 feet from your home like the Crucials. I have a strong feeling I know how all of you would vote if that was the case. The fact that people speaking in favor of the expansion, like Mr. Banky's wine or the way his establishment is decorated, is completely irrelevant to the impacts of the neighborhood with the expansion. I'll say it again like I said last time. I am not against the winery. I have 0 issues with the winery. I don't care if Mr. Banky has a bed and breakfast, which is another part of this CUP. It's not my business. I don't care if he hosts daytime events, bridal showers, corporate meetings, or all different events to bring Germantown families together, which was one of the points that was made earlier. I am strictly against a wedding venue. I don't trust Mr. Banky to follow any restrictions imposed on him by the board. In 2013, Mr. Banky applied for the CUP for the winery, and he promised residents that attended he had no intentions of serving hard alcohol and there would be no music after 9 p.m. Yet here we are, and I'm aware that this proposal is for beer and wine only, but trust me, that's just to get his foot in the door. The hard alcohol proposal, CUP amendment, will be coming after that if it gets passed tonight. Mr. Banky, by his own admission, said that in the discussion that he would like to serve hard alcohol at some point. I have 2 main concerns regarding the wedding venue. My first concern is the highly increased traffic coming down Apple Blossom Lane. We already get people looking for the winery coming down there. I'm sure many of Mr. Banky's clientele at the winery are repeat customers, so they know where it's located. When a wedding venue comes there, there's going to be literally hundreds of new people every weekend that have never been there and are thus going to get lost and turn down that driveway. It's going to increase traffic exponentially, and 2 of the 3 households on Apple Blossom Lane have small children that play outside and in the driveways. The traffic is a major concern. Not to mention with weddings comes drinking, and while I'm not going to exaggerate and say there's going to be a bunch of intoxicated drivers coming from the wedding to the wedding venue, there will certainly be some. My second concern is regarding the noise that will result from the wedding venue. The venue is approximately 800 feet from my residence and a mere 400 feet from the Crucials. In the Plan Commission hearing, Mr. Banky alluded to the noise on Highway 145. I'm assuming he's trying to say there's already significant noise there. The sound of a motorcycle roaring by for 2 seconds or the occasional construction that happens on 145 is nowhere near a valid comparison to hours of sustained amplified music over 100 days of the calendar year. It's a ridiculous comparison. Prior to the meeting, I sent each of you here a video of one of the outdoor music sessions that the winery had, and a second video of what it sounds like in the exact same area in the evening on an average night. And keep in mind, that's one person with a small amplifier a further distance from the proposed venue. Mr. Banky presented sound collection data for this proposal, a system bought and monitored by him, something that could no doubt be manipulated. According to some of the examples provided, a rainstorm is twice as loud as the outdoor performers. Use common sense, please, not the results of a sound monitoring system that was put in place and monitored by the party that it benefits. Other events marked on the sound data was lawn mowing, and yes, that can certainly be loud. It also generally happens during daytime hours and is an expected part of having neighbors. A wedding venue is most certainly not. I doubt Mr. Banky had plans for the venue in 2009 when he sold the lot to my family. But in 2018, when the closest lot to the proposed venue was sold, I have no doubt the plans were already in the works. I feel most for the Crucials, whose home is a mere 400 feet from the proposed venue. I sure didn't see that in the realtor's listing in 2018. The wedding venue drops the property value of all the residences while putting more money in Mr. Banky's pocket. At one point, he owned all 3 lots to the east totaling 15 acres. We wouldn't be here having this discussion if he chose to keep them, as there wouldn't be anybody to oppose it. However, he chose to sell those lots as residential with the appearance of peace and privacy. I'll leave you with my final point that I didn't have in 2020. The 2050 plan was in its infancy at the time, and now the boundaries are set and all the properties fall within the Rural Preservation District. I emailed one of your planners, Ms. Zant, and I inquired what zoning or where on the future land use plan chart a wedding venue would fall under. And this was her written response, and I quote, "In terms of the future land use plan, a wedding venue would likely fall under commercial land use category, but could also fall within mixed use designation or as an agribusiness use." I'm sure most of you know the land use chart for the Rural Preservation District, but in case you don't recall it offhand, commercial and mixed use fall completely within the undesirable category, not the acceptable category, the undesirable. And when I emailed Ms. Zant to confirm that I was using the right chart and that would place the wedding venue in an undesirable category, I ironically didn't receive an email back. And that was over 2 weeks ago. And I'm not going to gloss over the third term that Ms. Zant used, in agribusiness, because that falls under the desirable category. I think it's funny that this is the term that was used in the planner's presentation to the Plan Commission and no mention of commercial land use, which Ms. Zant said that it would probably fall under. One of the common definitions I can find of agribusiness is an industry engaged in producing operations of a farm, the manufacture and distribution of farm equipment and supplies, and the processing, storage, and distribution of farm commodities. Jim's Pumpkin Farm up the road is an agribusiness. The existing winery could certainly fall under an agribusiness. As I heard it put in one article where a wedding venue was recently turned down, it is a business proposition, pure and simple, in which the agricultural use of a property is incidental at best. Or to put it more bluntly, the wedding venue isn't an agribusiness because it's going to be held in a big red barn. Please follow your 2050 plan, even if the planners chose to ignore it. Take our concerns seriously and deny the CUP in regards to the wedding venue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance? Anyone else for citizen input or public appearance? All right, since there is no one else, we'll go to next item on the agenda, which is consent agenda.
Motion to approve A and B consent.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve consent agenda items A through C.
B as in boy. Oh, I see C. Excuse
C.
me.
Is your motion for A through C?
My mistake.
Thank you. All right. And for the second?
Second's fine with that.
All right. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve? No discussion? We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Myers, Trustee Pieper,
Aye.
Trustee Baum,
Aye.
Trustee Hudson,
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky,
Aye.
Trustee Rick Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Jan Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Nightrider,
Aye.
President Walter.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
That then takes us down to new business, and we start with new business item A. Keith Kindred, SEH Inc., agent for Home Path Financial LP, property owner, Lot 6, Heritage Park, and outlot CSM 4988, final subdivision plat for Heritage Park North, a 35-lot residential single-family subdivision. To help give us some more information and background on this new business item, I'll turn the meeting over to our associate planner, Emily Zant.
Thank you. Keith Kindred, agent for Home Path Financial, is requesting approval of a final subdivision plat for Heritage Park North. The property is zoned RS5 single family and is surrounded by RS4 and RS5 zoning. In July 2019, the Village Board approved the preliminary plat for Heritage Park North with 8 conditions. These conditions have been met with the final plat. In summary, the subdivision is 33 acres, 35 single-family lots, density of 1.62 dwelling units per net acre, and an average lot size of 20,571 square feet. There is road access from Division Road to the west, Larkspur Lane Bittersweet Trail to the north, and Gunflint Trail to the east. This property is served by village sewer and water utilities. In order to be eligible for approval by the village, Wisconsin State Statute 236.111B requires a final plat to substantially conform to the approved preliminary plat. Staff and the Plan Commission have determined that the plat does substantially conform to the approved preliminary plat. There were a few comments from the Public Works Department, the village surveyor. We are still waiting on a letter of no objection from the Wisconsin Department of Administration, and the declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions were submitted on December 1st for review and approval by the village attorney. So it's the Plan Commission's recommendation to approve the final subdivision plat for the 35-lot Heritage Park North residential subdivision located east of Division Road and north of Revere Lane, subject to 4 conditions.
Board?
Motion to approve new business A.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Trustee Pieper.
I just wanted to ask, which are there going to be a couple roads that are going to now be connected in this subdivision? It's kind of hard to tell,
Yeah, so
but it looks like 3.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here.
Four.
So Larkspur Lane and Bittersweet Trail will be connected to the north, or to the subdivision to the north. Gunflint Trail will head east from the subdivision, and then Division Road is along the west side.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's Larkspur Lane. There's 4. Larkspur Lane is connected to the subdivision. Bittersweet Trail is connected to the subdivision. Gunflint Trail is connected to the subdivision, and then Division Road, just north of Revere.
So, okay, so the street that's going to Division, if the map was expanded, it would show connecting across another street?
Yes, correct.
Okay, all right.
Further discussion? Trustee Jan Miller.
Could you go back to the conditions page? Thank you. And how common is it to bring this in front of the board if you don't have the DOA already in hand?
I think it's fairly common to do so. We did request some modifications again from the village surveyor, and those needed to be changed and then resubmitted to the Wisconsin DOA. So I think it's very common, and I think we're in a good spot moving forward.
What's your timeline on getting something back?
I can see if the developer is here this evening and has some information for timing.
I'm going to,
If you could
sir,
come to the
I'm going to need you to come to the podium, please. There are people at home that are watching, and they'd like to hear your response as well, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Ken Frank, Home Path Financial. I would expect probably a couple weeks. And it's been in, and then obviously we made a few changes, had to resubmit, so they've already seen it once.
Further discussion? Trustee Myers.
I was going to say, in the past, well, my motion actually covers those 4 recommendations. And in the past, when we've had other developments in regard to this, these are the same things that we have seen in the past. So to answer the question in regard to this, it's always with those approvals until they're actually satisfied. Probably administration would probably be your hardest one to get.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any additional comment I would make is for full disclosure, I do live behind this subdivision on Larkspur Lane, so it does connect to what was once considered a dead-end road and will now be considerably more, not considerably, but we'll have probably more traffic because of it. The biggest concern of my neighbors and the surrounding neighborhood was drainage off of this particular development coming into the properties that have been there since 1995. And it's been stated several times in several different meetings for that concern. I can tell you that since they put in their final grading and through some very significant rain events that have happened within the last couple of months, there's been no issues of drainage coming from that subdivision. And in fact, the drainage plan that they have currently works very well. And previous to this subdivision going on, there was a very big rain event that occurred probably over 15 years ago that filled the corner of Revere and Division up to the limit of the road and then slowly drained off. I think we've had similar events since then, since this has been put in. Not as bad, but pretty substantial rain. And we've seen no issues of drainage here whatsoever. So they did a fantastic job. And as long as the future homeowners honor the grading plan as it stands, there really shouldn't be any future issues either. So the neighbors appreciate that.
Thank you.
Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you, sir, for coming. Next item under new business is new business item B. Kevin H. Benke, agent and property owner of the Appleworks Winery LLC, located at West 179 North 12536 Fond du Lac Avenue. Application to amend a conditional use permit number 01-13 to conditional permit number 05-2022 to revise the hours and expand the existing winery to include a 2,880 square foot building with a seating capacity of 125 persons, additional on-site vehicle parking, and the use of the existing dwelling as a short-term bed and breakfast type rental on the property. To give us some more information and background on this new business item, I'll turn the meeting over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzela.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Appleworks Winery property is just under 11 acres in size. It's located on on Fond du Lac Avenue, State Highway 145. It's about a quarter mile north of Lover's Lane, and it's highlighted in red on the screen. A couple of our speakers this evening are property owners in the subdivision just to the east, as you can see on the aerial photograph. This zoomed in aerial of the site shows the buildings on the property at present. They include a single-family residential dwelling in the foreground, a tasting room and outdoor patio along the left or west side of the property, a winery production facility and storage area on the north part of the area with the buildings, a storage building that was constructed in the last few years on the east side of the property, and there's a barn in the middle of all of the other buildings that was renovated recently by the property owner. This graphic shows those as well, and also the apple tree area that lies to the north part of the property on the graphic to the right. Back in 2013, a conditional use permit was granted to Kevin Benke for his Appleworks winery operation. The features that were proposed, the components that were approved at the time included a 2.5 acre vineyard that was to be planted on the property to the west side, if you will, of the apple trees in the northwest corner of the property. I understand that that has not yet occurred, but is in process. Additional features included manufacturing, process, storage, and wine sales to be conducted in the large storage building and the tasting room. The tasting room also included a retail store. The tasting room was approximately 1,600 square feet in area. There is an outdoor patio with a pergola. There's 2 paved areas that are approximately 800 square feet in area. And also included in the original conditional use permit activities that were approved are seasonal sales and events. The current hours of operation approved as part of conditional use permit 01-13 include hours Sunday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. However, as Mr. Benke has indicated in his application, the typical hours of the operation recently and over the last, I guess, year or so are approximately Thursday through Saturday, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., and on Sunday from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. In 2020, many of you will recall that a conditional use permit application was proposed to expand the operation to include a wedding venue as part of or to be operated from the 2,880 square foot barn located in the central portion of the property. That CUP proposal was denied by the village board in February of 2021. That proposal included the event venue as a separate use from the winery and added a parking area of 35 to 50 vehicle parking stalls. The current proposal, as part of this revised application, is to expand or revise the winery hours from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m., with the hour of 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. to be used exclusively by staff for cleanup activities, to expand the size or the area of the winery operation to include the 2,800 square foot renovated barn for more and larger events. The renovations to the barn that have already been made by the property owner include a catering prep kitchen, indoor restrooms, and the overall renovated barn has a capacity for 125 persons. That in addition to the 50-person capacity for the tasting room, for a total site capacity, if you will, between the two buildings of 175 patrons. Another component of the proposal is to construct an additional 35 to 50 vehicle gravel parking lot, possibly to be paved in the future, north of the tasting room and outdoor patio area. And finally, another component is to add a bed and breakfast style short-term rental. The existing single-family dwelling on the property would be converted to that bed and breakfast style short-term rental after a new single-family home is constructed on the property in the northwest corner of the property at some point in the future. Winery events that were included in the application that Mr. Benke has provided include a wine club tasting and food pairing events, corporate events and parties, anniversary and birthday parties, weddings, graduations, bridal and baby showers, rehearsal parties, family gatherings. The location of those events would be in the renovated barn, could also be in the tasting room and as part of the outdoor patio as the proposal currently is presented. On-site parking would be provided in two areas, an existing 20-stall paved parking lot in front of the tasting room, and again, the proposed 35 to 50 stall gravel parking lot proposed on the west side of the property. This graphic shows, again, the buildings located on the property, and staff comments included as part of the staff report include that the winery operation and tasting room, the patio area and event building is generally consistent with the concept of agritourism uses promoted in a 2050 plan. The Appleworks winery operation has grown and evolved with more and different activities and events than originally proposed. The measures that have been taken to reduce and mitigate the noise potential include live music being indoors and in the outdoor patio area only. The music has been limited to acoustic instruments by soloists and small ensembles with low wattage amplifier or speakers. No amplified or pre-recorded piped in music, if you will, has been and would be presented outdoors. And as was discussed, there is a system that Mr. Benke has installed on his own, Noise Aware. It's a noise monitoring and notification system. There are monitors mounted on the property, I believe in 3 locations, where Mr. Benke can set a decibel level, and if that decibel level is reached, notification is sent to him indicating at one of those sites that the noise level has exceeded the established range. Beyond that, the noise monitoring system is not something that's used by staff or the village for any sort of enforcement or administrative purposes. The sound levels monitored in 2020 as presented in some documents that are included in the packet. In staff's opinion, generally support the predictions that were made back in 2020 by an acoustic engineer with Rydell and Associates that was brought on board by Mr. Benke to analyze the impact of live music from the outdoor patio and indoor buildings. And those findings were that the music that would be played from the outdoor patio and indoor buildings would not be distinguishable from existing or ambient background noise sources, sound sources in the area. The B&B, the short-term rental component, is allowed in an A2 district with a conditional use permit. It does require owner occupancy, and in this case would only be allowed as an accessory use. After the single-family dwelling would be converted to an accessory building with a new single-family home being the primary residence of Mr. Benke. And the B&B would only be allowed in the case that the owner, Mr. Benke, resides on the property and lives in this new single-family home and serves as the staff managing the B&B operations. With that, the Plan Commission recommendation is to approve a conditional use permit amendment to conditional use 01-13 that we have compiled into a new CUP with the 22 conditions that were recommended for approval by the Plan Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Benke has,
I guess I have the floor now at this point. Well, I appreciate the board looking at this again, and I'm sensitive to Will's and Schwinn and the Kerschel's concerns about the noise at the property. I just want to point out that in 13, I did say that the property would be quiet, and I guess I think I have stuck to that. I do not serve any hard alcohol. We're only open till 9, and now lately, since COVID, we are open till 8. We're only open about 30 hours a week. That's not very much. And we can control how much we want to be open or not, and we don't want to be open 7 days a week, and we have not been. I want to just comment a little bit about the noise. Mr. Will brought up some good points, and I understand that. He doesn't have a problem with the winery as a general rule. I mean, we're all fixated on the word event, wedding venue. This isn't just for wedding venues. This is, I didn't even put that word in my proposal when I gave it to Jeff, because it's like everybody fixates on that. I can do a wedding venue right now at the current operation, but it can only be for 50 people. So, and I've had inquiries for that, but they don't like my price. So we haven't done any. So, I mean, we're very picky with some of this stuff. So this expansion isn't strictly for wedding venues. Somebody approaches me and they like what I have to offer, we'd like to be able to offer it. But that might not be. I mean, I might get 10 proposals and maybe one person will take it. I mean, it's not a guarantee that I'm going to have these weekly. It's just not going to happen. It's a reality. And when it comes to some complaints about sound, we had music on a Friday night, one time this year. And we did have the Kerschels sent us a message through Facebook Messenger at 8:31. We were supposed to play till 8:30. 8:31, she said that the music was loud and her kids couldn't sleep. Well, we stopped playing music about 10 minutes after that. So we responded to her when we got the message a little after 9 o'clock and said we had already stopped playing. So again, you get the sound ordinance. You can't have sound after 10. You can't do this. I mean, I'm in a kind of a hard position because there's no documentation on what is sound and what's allowable. So that's a tough thing as a person like me has to deal with. So that was one time that, you know, I can point that out. And I'm glad she brought it up, actually. The other thing is, The Kerschels both they have been in the winery and they've had their children in the winery and they bought wine from us. So, I mean, we're picking and choosing stuff that we don't like right now. And that's kind of unfair to me. And like I say, the wedding venue thing, that is just a buzzword that everybody's fixated on. Nobody's going to say that I'm going to have them that often. I mean, we don't now. I mean, so why would that change? We just want to have the luxury, if we can do it, we'd like to be able to do it. And when it comes to the hours, I'm asking for 4 hours a week more. That's it. 4 hours compared to what we're allowed to do right now. And 4 hours is next to nothing. So, I mean, the other thing too with the sound, and we're just going to go down a little list here because these are bullet points I had on my agenda anyhow. The noise aware system is not controlled by me. We buy the sensors from them. They're hooked up online. They send data to the company and they send me a report either daily or if there's an issue with too loud, I get a notification. I don't control that. Whatever it is what it is. And Kurt brought up about the rain. One sensor's in the building. You have to have a master. The outside sensors sends information to that master. Well, these are metal farm buildings. If it's raining hard, that's like a drum. So that indoor sensor is going to pick that up. And so that's what that is. When I say rain on the thing, that's exactly what it was. It was heavy rain. The indoor sensor said, here's what's going on. So that's how sensitive they are. I mean, I think they're really nice. In fact, we talked at the planning commission that I'm going to leave them up. I'm not going to take them down. Although it's been a little challenging now with some freezing rain and stuff for the outdoor sensors. But I think as a general rule, I think they're pretty effective. You know, when sound is a really tough thing, and I know that they think they're relatively close. And if I build a house there with the Airbnb, our house will be as close, if not closer, than the Kerschel's house to the venue. So, I mean, we're not abandoning that property. So, I mean, I've tried to work within the restraints of what the village has established when it comes to noise, when it comes to hours of operation. I mean, I really felt that we have just bent over backwards to try to fall within those rules that the village has set up. So, I mean, like I say, the noise is a tough thing. I mean, I have been in Germantown since 90. I got my first CUP in 90 for my other business, and I renovated a foreclosed building here in Germantown. And it's right across the street from a residential subdivision. In 93, I got another permit to build another commercial building on that property. Again, across from a residential area, right here off of Pilgrim Road. In 2002, I bought the Appleworks Winery, not the winery, but the Appleworks. I got a CUP to do what I wanted there. I got a permission to put up a fourth building someday. And we exercised that a couple years ago and we put that building up. And in 2004, I got a CUP to put the subdivision in. And in 2013, I got a CUP to do the winery. None of those CUPs had the provision that if I ever sold the property someday, the CUPs were invalid. So that kind of upset me a little bit, and that's in the proposal that Germantown has given me. So I think that's a little much to ask of me to just throw that all away after 25 or 30 or 40 years of building up that property. Property is valueless without that CUP. So I mean, those are things that I'm concerned about with the whole deal, but like I say, everybody's fixated on the word wedding venue. And I understand that because there can be problems, but problems, it all has to do with who's running it. And I run a pretty tight ship over there. And I guess I'm looking for the village. Does he have any questions? I'm here to answer them.
Trustee Peeper.
I do have a couple questions.
Okay.
When did you open the winery?
2016.
2016. And when were the 3 houses built in the subdivision behind you?
I don't know the exact date of that, all those 3. 2018 for one, 2014.
Could I ask
for
you
the other.
guys when your house was 2009? And then the Crucials?
The other one, I'm not sure when that was built, because that was a funny thing, because the builder that bought that lot from me built a house in there and he absconded with funds.
Yeah.
Went into fire sale from the bank.
And then Jeff, You said there was a condition that there were supposed to be apple trees planted to the west.
Fines.
Grapevines.
Oh,
Yeah,
grapevines.
One of the commitments that was made in the original application for the 2013 CUP was to plant a 2.5 acre vineyard.
Yep.
And it was discussed at the Plan Commission meeting that that has not happened yet.
And when was that decided?
That was proposed by me in the original CUP,
Which was what year?
2013. And I haven't planted them because I'm not a fan of cold climate grapes. You probably haven't been to the winery. I like warm climate grapes, so we bring stuff in from California and Chile. My passion is warm climate red wine. I have 30,000 bottles of warm climate red wine in working capital there. And I've just decided to plant a St. Pippin and a La Crosse because a good customer of mine has his own grapes. And he brought me some 2 years ago. And I've experimented with them. So I feel comfortable with those, and that's what I'm probably going to plant. But I did plant about 40 vines to experiment earlier, and I didn't like any kind of results that I was getting out of those. So to plant 2 acres of grapes, that's a big investment.
So the 40 vines that you did plant, how much of an area did those cover?
Oh, that only covers probably an area half the size of this room.
Okay, and then when Mrs. Crucial called, was their music being played inside or outside?
It was outside on a patio.
It was outside?
Yeah, so we had music outside one night this whole year
And that was during the summer?
during the summer.
Okay.
The rest of the time, it's in the afternoon from 2 to 5. That's pretty much our standard time when we play music outside, from 2 to 5.
Okay, where is this new house going to be built?
I think it's
The northwest corner of the property.
some of this information that we sent.
So could you point to it?
You'll have to, yeah. Yep, back in that corner.
There's going to be and how big is that house going to be?
How big?
Yeah.
1,500 square feet probably. It's just my wife and I now. How big a house do I need? But it's going to be post and beam construction to match the pergola and the cedar shelter and the historical German house. We want to stay with that post and beam manufacturing method.
Those are all the questions I have right now.
Trustee Hudson.
I have questions for our staff. I guess I'm looking for clarification. So is this use undesirable under the 2050 plan, or is this use not undesirable in the 2050 plan? I'm kind of getting both messages. So where does this fall?
It depends on how you classify it. On one end of the spectrum, the use involves the production of a product on the site. Arguably, the vines that will be planted will produce the grapes that will also be used. I don't know, do you make wine using the
Make apple
apples?
wine too, so, which is.
So it's an agricultural use, but it
So
includes
that-
it.
That you're talking about a future which may or may not happen, that the village asked that to happen in 2013, and those vines have not yet been planted.
Well,
So,
He didn't really ask me to do that. That was.
sir, excuse me. I'm talking to our staff. I'm looking for an answer from our staff, please. So those vines don't exist right now.
No, but the apples do. And he does produce on-site product.
Okay, so then talk about the apples. Don't talk about the vines. So that's fine. So I still am looking for clarification.
So back in 2013, the application was for the winery that included the tasting room component and retail sales, production on site, tasting on site, sales on site. At the time, it was discussed there would be events. Arguably, those events would not be very large in size because of the limitation on the size of the building and the condition that ultimately was adopted that limits effectively the events to 50 people. Now, there is an expansion of that to include another building. Now, Can the same sort of events take place? The corporate wine tasting, the club tasting events? Arguably, yes, that's a component closely more aligned with the production of the wines on site. You know, it gets a little, I would admit, it's a little far afield when you start talking about weddings being conducted and how does that relate to production on the site. But it is proposed to be an event venue that can handle a variety of events. And it's something that the staff doesn't want to get into in terms of saying you can have this kind of event, but not this kind of event. So we're limiting it by the number of people and the hours of operation and those sorts of activities. That's the proposal.
And so in the staff's opinion, 175 people falls within the parameters of the 2050 plan? Is that what I hear you saying?
Well, I wouldn't say that.
That's why I'm asking
Okay.
the question.
If you recall, the 2050 plan was adopted with the intention of being more flexible in terms of its interpretation of uses and application of those. No longer are we in a plan mode where each parcel is classified as either residential, industrial, or commercial. And also, it bears explaining that the categories of desirable and undesirable also include a definition that it's undesirable means that it's generally not acceptable, but could be under certain circumstances.
I understand that.
And so we have a situation where we have an existing operation with an existing conditional use permit, and the request is to expand that to accommodate a larger and more events similar to what's been going on the property. And so that's where the staff support for the proposal comes into play, and presumably that's the decision that the Plan Commission made as part of their recommendation to approve as well.
So I'm still asking about desirable or undesirable, I guess, and I guess that's my question. So we have a citizen that has an email from our staff that says it would be undesirable. What I'm trying to do is balance these two things out.
Understood. And of course, it's going to come down to a collective decision about what's undesirable and what's not in this particular case. For me personally and professionally, I think this use is the sort of use that we should be encouraging to occur in our rural area. Old Germantown is another one. While it's not exclusively agricultural production, it includes a component of tourism and attractiveness to the area, provided that it's operated and managed and conducted in a way that complies with whatever conditions the board, Plan Commission, staff collectively agree are needed to limit or mitigate potential negative impacts on the surrounding neighbors. I think it's a good use. Now, in this case, there are nearby neighbors who don't necessarily agree, as we heard tonight, particularly with the wedding component. And that's where I don't know how you try and distinguish between you can have this kind of event, but you can't have that kind of event.
Yeah.
If that's something that the board feels is important, we can add it and we can enforce it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Benke, I'd like to apologize for
That's all
snapping
right.
at you.
That's fine.
That was uncalled for.
Yes.
Fine.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
Stan?
Does anyone have any other questions for Mr. Banky? On the board? Trustee Myers? That's correct, for Mr. Banky. Turn the mic on.
Thank you. Usually I have it all.
Put it in front of you too, please.
Oh, it's in front of me.
Okay,
Almost got it
good.
in my mouth. Anyhow, how do you want me to handle it? Because you asked in regard to questions to Mr. Benke. I may have some, but I think more to the administration at this time.
Why don't we wait until we get into some discussion for administration? Mr. Banky's sitting at the podium now, so let's ask him any questions that we might have, and then he can sit down, and if he's needed again for further discussion or for further clarification, we can bring him back up, but he's standing in front of us asking for any questions based on what he's presented.
You know, I'll pass it this time then.
All right, I do have a couple questions for you, Mr. Banky. So part of your statement is saying that you're not looking for hard alcohol at this time. Right now, the village is limited in the amount of liquor licenses that we can have. Right, the only liquor licenses we have available are really in a kind of a temporary or in addition to. And those liquor licenses are usually a little bit higher in cost because they're considered in addition. So for that license, it's $10,000. Is that something you're still looking to pursue, being that we don't have that availability?
We've done so well in the last 6.5 years with the wine and beer, because we have beer. And we had our daughter's wedding in there, a year ago. And to be honest with you, they hardly drank much beer. And what beer they did drink, it was craft beer out of a can and bottle. Quarter barrel, we didn't even use a half of one. So it was wine and beer. Demographics has changed when it comes to young groups of people. Most of the time, the person that wants a hard alcohol is somebody older. I'll be honest with you. Grandma wants old fashioned. But when it comes to the younger group, beer and wine, I mean, that seems to be the trend. I'll be honest. So hard alcohol is not that big a factor to me. And I think the $10,000, I think for the license, that's what that is. I mean, I think that that's a needed component.
Okay.
I really don't. I mean, I might be proven wrong in 3 years from now, but part of the thing with this thing is when you do an event by me, you have to buy my wines. So, I mean, it's also a source for me to sell more product. But we give them a discount, if they're using our wine for their event, we usually give them a discount on that wine, because it's usually by the bottle, so we're not pouring it by the glass. And like I say, we've got that model now that we've had for 6.5 years, and that has worked well.
Okay. Right now, the number of people that this is being proposed for is 125. Is that just based on the size of the room, or is that just a number that we've come with from where? I mean,
Pretty much the size of the room, because I had an architect look at this whole project earlier, and for egress and stuff, it depends if you have to have round tables, you have rectangulars, there's all sorts of different things. It could be 140 people with rectangular, 125 with round
Okay.
tables.
Is that a make or break number for you, or is it something that if it would be proposed from this body to be less, is that something that you'd be open to?
Well, I think I would, not as long as it's not, 50.
Okay. Question for the attorney and based on the conditional use, is that something that we can do in regards to recommendations?
Yes, certainly. The conditional use process is designed to identify potential issues and to set conditions that are specifically related to those expressed concerns. And certainly a capacity type limitation probably would qualify in these cases.
Okay.
I mean, just a note, our daughter's wedding was 80 people, and it was a nice crowd.
Okay. The hours of operation you have till 10 PM and then cleanup from 10 to 11?
Yeah.
Is that also something that you've worked through your business plan, or would you be amenable to something less than like 9 PM?
I think the 10 o'clock, we based it around the sound ordinance to try to, we're done making any kind of noise at that 10 PM. And you're not gonna, even if you, like at 9 o'clock, sometimes it's even hard to get people to leave. It just is. People, they mill together, and that's why we're asking for that extra hour to make sure we can get everybody out of there and then clean up.
I know that recently I was at a family wedding at the Crystal Ballroom, and they pretty much shut it down by 10 PM.
Yeah, 10 o'clock. I think by 10, we would just want to be done.
Okay, but if this body would look at, be based on the neighbors and the young children that are there, are surrounding your facility, 9 PM could be something that might be proposed based on just,
I have 9 o'clock now.
okay. All right.
Like I
Any
said,
other,
we based it on that sound ordinance.
any other questions for Mr. Banky? No other questions?
I have.
No, village attorney.
I think I heard you say you have 3 of these noise monitoring
Yeah,
devices
there's
on the
one
property.
inside, which is like the master, and then you have the slaves, which send signals to that.
Okay. And whereabouts on the property are those located?
I can show you right now on this picture. One right here. Distance, they have to be close enough that it can send a signal.
Okay.
So they're even actually, They're about 75 feet or so off the lot line towards me. One might be 90 feet.
Yeah, I was just wondering, obviously, because if they're, over on the west side,
No, that's. they're
totally
back there.
different type of
They're
circumstance.
back there because that's the point of contention, is that where that house is.
Any other questions for Mr. Benke? Thank you, sir. You can sit down, and if we have any other questions, we'll ask. We appreciate your input. Board, Trustee Kaminsky.
Jeff, tell me again, how close is the renovated barn, which is where the new party venue is going to be, correct? How close is that in a straight line to that house? The closest house?
I don't have that figure committed to memory. It's approximately 750 to 800 feet. No? No? Okay. I don't have that figure.
Okay. And I guess I would just comment that I personally don't have a problem with this, except for that one neighbor's complaint, which is why I was asking. I recently, this past year, was at a wedding venue in Lake Geneva that was smack dab in a residential area in the downtown, right on the fringe of downtown. And they ran it very much like this, where by 10 o'clock, it's a shutdown and there's a cleanup and the music's only indoors. And it seemed to work very well. In fact, I asked at that time, I said, don't you get some complaints? And they said, no, because of the timing, that it's just very structured. And once again, too, they don't have weddings every weekend. But this is the way people do weddings now, more than in the old, Union Hall or something from like 50 years ago. People want these unusual venues, and I think that this could be a real plus for the community. And when I looked back at what the Plan Commission did online, I think that a lot of effort went into coming up with parameters to attempt to make this work. And again, being conditional use, we can always come back if it's not working and make adjustments or whatever. But I was really amazed at the amount of work that already went into this before it got to the village board.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Just as a follow-up, I think Trustee Kaminsky brings up a good point, and that is the ability to revisit and review the operation over time. In this case, it's rather unique in that the property owner, Mr. Benke, has already renovated the barn at his own expense and has put in place the facility on his own to hold events. And unlike other CUPs in our past, where the property owner has always said, well, if you have an annual review requirement and you don't like what I'm doing, then I've invested all this money for no reason. In this case, it's sort of the opposite in that Mr. Benke's already made that investment. The facility's already there. And if you do an annual review that results in some adjustment of that operation, I don't know if the same argument can be made that we led them down the path of approving something only to have it taken away at some point in the future. So I would suggest that you can consider including, this wasn't discussed at the Plan Commission level, but a requirement to come back in a year after the permit has been issued, assuming it is, and do a review, look back on a year's worth of activities and events, and with the idea that the neighbors now know to file a complaint if there's a noise complaint that needs to be filed. It's not unheard of for us to include that kind of requirement as part of a conditional use permit in a situation where the use is relatively unknown. I mean, we know that historically what's been conducted so far hasn't, in my opinion, and based on the evidence that I have, including no reports from the police department, has been conducted in a way that hasn't been a nuisance to the neighborhood. But we're talking about expanding the floor area, doubling it, and the capacity, tripling it. So maybe a review requirement might be in order. That's just something to consider.
Board? Trustee Myers?
How many total acres, Jeff, are in this property?
10.8 acres.
And how many total acres are being used or proposed to be used for growing trees, apple trees, egg, shall we say?
Mr. Binky could probably respond to that. I know the proposal was to add 2 acres of vineyard, but there's existing apple trees in an amount covering an area that I'm not familiar with. It could be,
The reason why
2 to 3 acres, 4 acres.
The answer is about 5 acres from Mr. Benke.
The reason, because you mentioned before that with the expansion, it would be half this size of this room or something. I think you said.
No, that was 40 vines that he had put in for testing.
For testing. And how many days a week would this be allowed? Was that Thursday through Sunday?
The proposal is for an entire week, all week, but the typical hours are Thursday through Saturday.
So it could be 7 days a week? Is that what I heard you say, Jeff?
Yes, the proposal is to go from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. Sunday through Saturday.
Repeat that. I thought you said they could be used from Monday through Friday also.
Yeah, Sunday through Saturday would be a full
The
week.
full week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
And then each day it would be allowed how many hours?
The proposal is 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. with the 10 p.m. to 11 p.m., the last hour of the day, for cleanup activities only, so not event activities.
Could be, if it was every day, it would be maybe 70 hours. Thank you for that correction. How many parking slots are there right now?
Right now, in the paved parking area in front of the tasting room, it's approximately 20 stalls.
20 stalls. And so I think I've heard that we want to increase that from 30 to 50 addition.
There's a proposal for a gravel parking area that the maximum stalls would be 50 vehicles.
And then 20 with the other ones would be a total of 70.
Correct.
Thank you. This goes to our police chief. Is there any parking allowed on Fond du Lac?
No.
The state
The
highway.
state highway.
We are allowing now up to 175 people.
No, the limit now is 50.
And 125 for the venue.
But
Is that where he's getting his 175 from?
Yes, the total would be 175 under the proposed
50 now
expansion.
going to 175.
Across 2 buildings. 175 would not be allowed in the proposed venue. It would be 50 in the wine tasting room and 125 in the venue.
Now, keep in mind, the total allowance of 175, if there's a few less in the renovated barn and a few more in the outdoor patio area west of the tasting room, yes.
I'm just looking probably at the total because you could have people in both rooms.
Yes.
All parking there, whatever.
Yes, arguably, the way this is set up and proposed, one event could occupy the renovated barn, the tasting room, and the outdoor patio area.
I think you said some amp music could be played. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, the proposal that is recommended for approval by the Plan Commission includes an allowance for music. If we were to look at the proposed draft conditional use permit number 5-22, condition number 15 reads, outdoor music is allowed only on or from the outdoor patios, north and northwest of the tasting room building. Outdoor music shall be permitted between 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. only on Sunday through Thursday, and from 12 p.m. until 9 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. Outdoor music shall be limited to low-impact acoustic-type instruments. Examples include string instruments, piano, woodwind instruments with small, low-wattage amplifiers or personal-sized PA system speakers by solo artists or small ensembles.
I think that's where I heard the amplifiers in regard to that per se.
Right. Condition 16, indoor music is allowed only in the tasting room building and in the renovated barn, and shall be permitted between 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. only on Sunday through Thursday, and from 12 p.m. until 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday.
Thank you for your answers, Jeff.
Trustee Pieper.
Quick question. So music can be played outside on Fridays and Saturdays from 12 p.m. till 9 p.m.?
Correct.
Yeah. Can I ask why you chose 9 p.m. as a stopping point on Fridays and Saturdays when Mrs. Crucial said she called the winery at 8:30, 8:31 because she was having trouble getting her children to sleep?
What I read through condition 15 and 16 reflects the proposal, the expanded hours, the current hours are Sunday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. And the typical time that events have been taking place are Thursday through Saturday from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. and Sunday 12 to 5. Those are the typical hours that events have been taking place, according to Mr. Benke. And we don't have any evidence that would indicate that he's having events the full time period that his operation is allowed to operate.
Where can I find all of the conditions for the CUP?
The existing CUP or the proposed one?
Being the backup.
Like, what page? I'm sorry, we've got like 500 pages on an agenda. This has to be one of the longest agendas I think I've ever seen.
No, the 1,000 page.
Really?
The one, I'm sorry, the one with the 2050 plan. Thank you so much, Sienna. 103.
That's 103.
Okay. For conditions of the CUP, is it ever allowed to have trees planted, a requirement of a specific type and number of trees planted as a noise barrier? Is that, Brian, is that allowed?
Certainly, we have in the past required noise mitigation efforts, plantings, berms, those types of things. I'm not sure Mr. Etzloff may have a better recollection if we've ever said it has to be this type of tree. Usually we give some leeway, but there have been conditions that would require.
Or even giving them maybe an option of 3 different types, like cypress hedges, oak leaf holly, arborvitaes, the ones that are barriers. Is that legal to add a condition like that to a CUP?
Well, Brian can jump in too, but I would say yes, if we know that what we're requiring as a potential sound mitigating measure will actually work and do what we expect it to.
Well, I know they work. I
From-
mean,
from
I
the-
have some.
From that standpoint, we might want to seek the advice of a professional sound person who
Or-
could advise as to what the minimum planting size would be.
Or maybe somebody who owns a nursery. We've got several nurseries around here. I mean,
Well, if they're noise experts too, that'd be great.
I don't know how, I mean, noise is just,
I mean, frankly, buildings probably mitigate more sound than do trees. Buildings and berms and sound barriers, I mean, physical opaque structures. I mean, look at the freeways in the Milwaukee area, what they're installing. They're putting up walls. They're not putting up trees.
it's a little different, in a
Right, it is.
backyard,
It is
trying to block
absolutely
music and, noise from a party.
To another place.
But how many feet is the nearest house? Would you guys be able to tell me?
400
400 feet?
400 feet.
Actually, we know the exact number. 383 feet, 383.4 feet.
Right, that's the northeast corner of the barn to the southwest corner of the house.
The crucials.
Right.
380,
380. It's a
380 feet.
football field, and then some.
All right, Brian, what requirements are needed to be zoned as agriculture? And does the winery fit that?
Well, certainly a winery traditionally would be an agricultural type use.
Like state statutes, don't make me get the state statute books out.
Well, the state statutes don't deal with zoning. That's a local municipal component. Certainly, the Department of Agriculture has regulations that govern various agricultural type uses.
Well, the Department of
Wineries-
Revenue has requirements for its chapter tax 18 for agriculture properties.
Certainly, I mean, Department of Revenue has all sorts of tax-related restrictions.
But it has
Um,
requirements of what can be defined as agriculture in here.
Right, for the purposes of tax type positions. That to me would be the least comparable method if you're looking at just, is a winery an agricultural use or not. I would rely more on the Department of Agriculture type determinations. And there they do have some regulations as it relates to wineries that are there.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, more importantly, the local zoning ordinance does provide for orchards and vineyards as a permitted use in both the A1 and the A2 agricultural districts. It's the accessory activities associated with that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about and why we required a conditional use permit in the first place. So that we could have the ultimate offshoot of requiring the CUP is the ability to regulate the operation to address any potential negative impacts through the measures that we feel are appropriate to deal with those. Or if we decide that it's not an appropriate use, we don't issue the conditional use permit. In this case, we did back in 2013, based on the information that was presented. And the operation, by all accounts, has expanded and has grown to include events that arguably the owner feels are an important component of the business and wants to expand the operation to accommodate more or larger events. And it's up to us to decide whether that's an appropriate accessory use to the property.
The conditions for the CUP in 2013, are those readily handy in the packet, the agenda packet?
They are. I don't have the page number though for those.
Thank you, Deanna. I know you're, take your time because I'll look at it. Those are all my questions right now. I'll save my comments for when a motion's made.
Trustee Baum.
Just before you jump in, it's packet page 126 is the first page of the existing CUP.
Trustee Baum.
I would like to go ahead and make the motion to approve the amendment to the conditional use number 01-13 as presented with the 21 conditions.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Myers.
Jeff, on Holy Hill Road for the industrial buildings, we had them put that very large berm up. Was that to hide the building only? Was that the concept behind that?
Principally a visual buffer or berm, but also secondarily it provides some mitigation of potential noise and lights from the vehicles. If they were to be on the property at hours outside of normal business hours per se.
I think we also had that also on what is Rockville Road for the one business that is there also. They have a large berm running around there, just off of.
Right, the Illing Company, that's correct.
Thank you. So that is something, actually, the berm, and I think the other one we had was for the golf course and the hotel room at that time. We had them put a berm and a fence and trees up in that area.
That is true, and that again was intended to address a visual situation. The residents in Rivers Bend didn't necessarily want to see the parking lot on the backside of the Buffalo Wild Wings restaurant. They didn't want the lights, sweeping across their backyards and in their windows as they drove in and out of the parking in the evening hours. So it was a visual buffer principally.
And where I am on Goldendale, where it runs parallel to 4145 until it turns to go down Goldendale, they have a large trees and a buffer in that. But that was from many years ago, and that was what acceptable was at that time was also mentioned was the large walls that they are now putting up on North Avenue along the expressway to actually do a better job in regard to sound. But a buffer and trees along that particular property could mitigate some of that sound. I know there's a road there. I don't know who owns what property. I see there are some trees there, but not actually a buffer per se. Is that something that could be put in this proposal?
In my opinion, I think it would be difficult to put in a berm of the magnitude that you're suggesting in the area that's available without removing established trees and buildings, et cetera. Personally, I don't know what height and type we would require at this point to accomplish mitigating or reducing a sound level that we're not exactly sure what it even is at this point, other than the information that was presented by Mr. Benke by way of his noise monitoring system is that the sound level during events when music is played is comparable to the ambient noise of the area, traffic on Fond du Lac Avenue and that sort of thing, whether it's trains in the distance, neighbors mowing lawn and that sort of thing.
Thank you, Jeff. I understand that particular part in regard to that, and that's the part that kind of bothers me because the noise aspect, basically speaking, is there all the time. It doesn't have to be allowed, it's just there. And in the process of it, and what you've mentioned to me in regard to putting a berm or anything in there and not being able to do that, basically speaking, I'm going to have to be against these proposals for this evening. Thank you, Jeff.
Trustee Pieper.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion to add an additional condition that the winery puts in some sound barrier trees, like cypress hedges, oak leaf holly, or arborvitaes, that is acceptable to the crucials and is put in an acceptable place that they accept, an acceptable number of,
I'm going to jump in and say that
I'm doing it.
that putting a requirement that's acceptable to a neighbor is a recipe for disaster.
Fine,
It
I'll
would
make
need to
it.
be
I'll do
something
this.
that is suitable to
20
staff.
medium size sound barrier trees or bushes
Where?
that are the cypress hedges, oak leaf holly, arborvitaes.
Where?
In between the winery and the Crucials property.
That's your motion to amend?
Hmm?
Motion made to amend. Do we have a second?
He'd have to recognize you, I'm sorry.
No, sir, not at this time. I appreciate that, but I'm in the middle of a motion to amend. Trustee Myers, did you approve or second it for discussion? Then discussion, trustee Myers.
May I recognize Jeff for a moment? I think he might add something to, not to, you know, he's raising his hand.
I have a very basic question.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
The motion was to approve with 21 conditions.
Right.
In the draft CUP 05-22, there are 22 conditions. So I'm wondering which one we're leaving out and or what list trustee Baum is referring to.
It was my understanding, it was my recollection that I added, there's 20 listed and I added 21.
Yeah, I don't think it's beneficial for us to go back and base off the plan commission discussion, the numbering sequence, because there were a couple of duplicates in the list that we had since removed. So I would suggest working off of the draft CUP document 05-22 that has 22 conditions.
Okay, so then I'll amend mine to 22.
So that your motion to amend is for the 23rd? You're adding an additional for 23 conditions? All right, and that's approved by the second?
Yes.
You have any other discussion, trustee Myers? In regards to your second and for discussion?
Looking at the picture that you have up right now, Jeff, they would conclude following along that tree line and going back further to the north. You got the tree line, you got those tree lines there, and then it would go beyond that barn or that building, I'll say, and the trees that are there, and it would follow along there behind the furthest west property. That would be what I would like to see in that motion.
I would,
It's a good idea, the proposal with the trees, but, yeah, walnut trees. So the lot line goes this way, all the way to this. These are black walnut trees right here. So, and there's black walnut trees through here too. So there's just a really small space that we could rip out some apple trees, which I would plan on doing in the next year or two anyhow. Put trees right in there, but they have to be compatible with black walnuts.
Mr. President.
Could you
Sir,
plant,
sir, please.
could you plant them along the drive?
Discussion in the midst of the audience, I would appreciate.
Can they be planted along the drive? That little curve.
Space there, but there's a large electrical there.
Further discussion on the motion to amend. Trustee Jan Miller.
Was I supposed to agree to the First Amendment going from 21 to 22?
No, you didn't make the motion.
It's part of the
or second.
original motion.
I don't think.
It was
I don't have
misstated.
to, oh.
The motion to approve is including the number of conditions as in the backup, which are 22. And the current motion is to amend that to 23 conditions, adding trees as a buffer. Do you have any further discussion on that motion to amend, trustee Miller?
I would say that without a sound expert in adding trees, shrubs, I think it's it's at another time. It needs to be done at another time. And I think the 22 conditions are favorable, and the Plan Commission moved those forward. I would agree with the 22.
Okay, further discussion on the motion to amend, trustee Myers.
To the person who made that motion, would you want to put something in there in regard to the size of the tree? Because if you're going to start with a little tree, you're going to have any success with that for, depending on the type of tree, maybe for 7 years.
I mean, the cypress hedges, they can grow 2 to 4 feet a year, I think, if
Bless you.
they're the right
That's
size.
whoever it was.
So I said medium-sized, but
Should put down maybe,
large, but if you put down large,
no, I'm just saying.
then
the
they
height
do
of the
not
tree,
grow.
4 feet, 6 feet, whatever.
Our typical requirement for evergreen trees as part of a site plan approval is a 6 to 8 foot height at installation.
Would you like me to add that, trustee Myers?
Yes.
All right, I will add that.
That is added to your motion that the trees must be 6 to 8 feet.
Yes.
Okay, and that is all right with the second?
Yes.
Okay, further discussion on the motion to amend. My only point to the motion is, there are significant amount of trees on the border already, I think that's to the east and around the barn, just directly to the east. I don't know if that's gonna matter. This is a kind of a raised area and you're out in the country, so there's not anything really to stop the sound. It's gonna go up and out. So anybody that is up and out from this property is going to hear it if it's amplified outside, or any noise that isn't of the norm from the night in this area. Any additional sound. If somebody would take their leaf blower and leave it running all night because they forgot it in the back 40, you would hear that all night, no matter where you are out in this area. So I don't think trees are going to do it. And walls aren't going to do it either, because even walls that block freeway noise, they just push it somewhere else. And from my property, I hear the freeway wall noise from Menominee Falls of Pilgrim and where the Whitestone Station comes to the freeway there off of Pilgrim Avenue. That noise comes up to us. It's just the people on the other side of it are buffered. Now we hear it because it reverberates our way. So, you know, you could probably limit the amount of noise by either the amount of people, the time that this is happening, or deny it as a whole. But I don't think trees are enough to do it, especially out in this area of the country. So that's just my thought. Further discussion on the motion to amend? No further?
I was just going to remind the board that condition 15 limits the outdoor music to the outdoor patio area. That's west and slightly northwest of the tasting room. Music associated with the barn is only allowed to be inside the barn.
Mr. Banky, you built this building to be four season? You insulated it? You insulated the roof? Okay. The answer to that question is yes. He insulated it for 4 seasons. I'm only saying that because you're off microphone. Further discussion on the motion to amend? Trustee Myers.
When the videos were taken, and I listened to the sound, and naturally it's going consistently all the time, and you had it during the day and night. Did you happen to notice where the music was coming from? The barn, outside, or whatever? You might have to come up with the answer to that. I'm sorry.
Well, it was music, so I would assume it came from
We just
the
talked
one
about,
place.
Mr. President,
If you're referring to the videos that I sent all of you, that was taken from an outdoor music on the outdoor patio, a scheduled performance at the winery.
Thank you. Nothing more, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to amend, please say aye. Opposed? Aye. Opposed, raise your hands. Motion fails. Back to the motion. Further discussion. Trustee Peeper.
Thank you. I'd like to make another motion to amend, because if this is going to get passed, I want the neighbors to at least have something. We already lied to them the first time around, and I hate this. Why do we always stick up for businesses and not the residents? We made promises and we're going back on it. Yes, I'm going to get on my soapbox and I'm going to say it again, because we don't stick up for the residents. We don't. All right, First Amendment. I'd like to add condition number 20, what are we on, 23? Or actually, you can amend one of the conditions that says outdoor music goes until 9. I'd like that changed until 8. And then I would like to add a condition that this CUP is reviewed annually by this board.
It would be. But that's
No,
fine. That's your motion to amend
Separately, other than just renewing all the
Yearly?
CUPs.
yearly?
Separately, when we don't go through all of the conditional use permit renewals.
On what type of time frame? Reviewed in what type of time frame? Yearly? Okay.
To begin, I'd like to review it in 6 months if this passes, and then we can go annually.
After the first 6 months?
Yes,
So you would have 6 months and then the next one would be a year after the end of that 6 months?
correct. That is my motion.
Okay. 6 months, that would put it at the time of the liquor license renewals, which would be reviewed anyways.
But I want it reviewed separately.
Understood. Motion made. Do we have a second?
Really, guys?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
I'm sorry.
Trustee Nyrider.
It'd be better, I'm sorry, Mr. President. It'd be better off, I think, if you had these two separated.
Okay, I'll separate them.
Okay.
We can do the outdoor music stops at 8 PM first.
Okay, that is your motion to amend. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Miller.
I just want to clarify. So the only time that it's allowed till 9 PM is Friday and Saturday. So you're saying that you want to limit that to 8 PM, not extend Sunday through Thursday to 8 PM?
Correct. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
Thanks, trustee.
Further discussion? No further discussion on the motion to amend? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Opposed, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying
fails.
everything I can right now.
Motion fails. Further discussion?
All right, let's do the next one. We review the CUP in 6 months from now, and then we review it separately on an annual basis.
Annual basis being at the time the liquor license is renewed?
No, separately then from the liquor licenses being reviewed or renewed.
Motion made and seconded. There was seconded, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on that motion to amend. Trustee Miller. Rick Miller.
Yeah, what does that entail? Like, okay, we review it in a year, then what? Like, does that mean it has to be approved annually, or it's just a quick review of, yes, they're still adhering to the CUP? What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Typically, if there were problems with a CUP, we would then go through a CUP revocation process. That process presumably would start as part of that review to say we'd like to pursue revocation, and then you'd go from there.
To me, it would give the neighbors at least a chance if something is not going well. If they're having issues, at least it gives them, I'm not trying to get this passed for you guys. I'm trying to stick up for you guys. But if this does go through, then at least they have an ability to come to the board, vocalize their concerns, and we can hear them and reevaluate. It's the least you guys could do for them.
Further discussion? Question for the village attorney. At the time that the liquor licenses are renewed, isn't that the time for the citizens to come forward and make any questions or complaints about the liquor license and its conditional use thereof?
At the time of liquor license renewal, certainly complaints about the operation of the liquor license would be considered. Certainly, any issues that were raised as part of that process could likewise be utilized.
Like
to-
complaints about noise?
Right, could certainly be utilized to, again, kickstart that conditional use revocation process as well.
Thank you. Further discussion, trustee Jan Miller.
This question is for Mr. Retzloff. Do we have any other businesses that have a similar, well, nobody's going to have a similar venue, but that are put on a CUP, I'm going to call it a annual review in Germantown, to the best of your
Not
knowledge?
currently. The last one that we had with an annual review requirement was the tattoo business up on Bonniewell.
Oh,
That,
Shady Lane kind of area.
yeah, that right at the corner there, the curve at Shady Lane and Bonniewell.
okay, we have.
Shadow Lane, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So my comment is, we do have, I believe we have a process already set up that if the homeowners, anyone in the area has a problem with noise, we've had residents come to the public safety and complain and have it registered. The property owner already has the noise notification when it goes higher than it's supposed to be. It's installed. It's the level. It's more than any of our, I don't know how many businesses do we have with noise monitors?
None.
To my knowledge, none.
Okay.
And the system that's installed is by and for the benefit of the property owner. As indicated earlier this evening, the results of that are not used by staff in any way for
Understood.
administration or enforcement.
Understood. But he can get an indication if something loud is going off. That's the purpose.
Yes, the benefit is that Mr. Benke gets made aware that he's
Notified.
exceeded a noise threshold and he
Right.
should do something about that.
Right. So,
Further discussion, trustee Pieper.
First off, our police department doesn't even have decibel readers. So it's completely objective. The reason they don't is because it is objective. There's nothing that is, you can't quantify it in a way that is accurate. And that's why our police department, we don't carry them. Is that right, Chief Snow? That you guys do not carry decibel readers? No, because it's unreliable. So
Subjective.
you were talking about his noise volume, and I'm sorry, Trustee Miller, but that was extremely hypocritical of you to make that comment of, oh, we listened to your concerns of, you can come to the public safety during the renewal time, because we had a resident call the police like 60 some times when a bar who has been there forever was operating 90%, 95% of the time within the parameters the village gave them. And then you say, oh, yeah, we put the owner of the Das Barrel Room through the ringer. For
Pieper,
hours.
can we remain civil, please?
How am I not being civil?
You're being accusatory and subjectively unfair to trustee Miller. Please keep it civil.
Sure, I'm done.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I would point out that condition number 3 reads as follows. If the use, activities, and or operation subject to this permit falls out of conformity with the conditions herein, or where there is a change in the nature, character, intensity, or extent of the permitted conditional uses and activities which cause special problems or harmful effects associated with the permitted uses and activities, that were not revealed or anticipated at the time the CUP was granted, or where conditions imposed by the CUP that were anticipated to mitigate or eliminate the harmful effects of the uses, but are subsequently insufficient to do so, or for similar cause based upon consideration for the public comfort, safety, and welfare, this conditional use permit may be terminated or modified by the village board by the amendment to or addition of conditions after public hearing thereon. So there's a condition in here that gives the board, puts everybody on notice that if you start operating beyond what we expected, or you told us you were going to be operating, or the noise levels, or the type of activities, we can bring the owner back in for review of the conditional use permit and hold a public hearing, notify the property owners, and so on. My earlier suggestion of an annual review would be to make it a formal process, at least for the next year. I don't know if you wanted it to be an annual renewing review, Trustee Pieper, after the first 6 months, and then annually thereafter. Did you mean to say every year thereafter? Because I didn't.
How about this? If we don't have any concerns from the neighbor, then we wouldn't need to review it annually. We'll do this 6 months from now. And then we can review it when he renews his liquor license. I can't recognize you, I'm sorry. Only he can. I can't, I'm sorry.
Like, not at this time, sir. Yeah, at the time for that discussion was during public comment. If I open it up to you, then I can open it up to everybody else that wants to do the same, and that now becomes. I understand that, and I think we got that point from the people that came and spoke up against. And I do appreciate that, and that to listen to this and go through this, but the time for your comment really was more in the beginning of the meeting. So, but I do appreciate you coming and listening to this and being part of the session, being ill as you are, but I think your neighbors did an excellent job in pursuing their points.
I'm used to sitting on my deck, it's quiet. I don't care what meters or whatever. If I can hear it, that's not why I want to. I want to sit there and relax and quiet. I'm sure the Wills did, and I'm sure the Crushers did.
I appreciate that, sir.
So, taking the time to listen to that.
Further discussion on the motion to amend. And if everybody here gets COVID, we're coming to you. I'm just kidding.
I live out in the country too. And if my neighbor is playing their music and I can hear it, is it distracting to me, or is it just part of living out in the country? I've listened to the videos. I cannot determine what volume level those are at, what decibel level those are at. So they didn't mean much to me. But I can sit on my front porch and I can listen to my neighbor 500 feet away, 8 acres away. I got 8 acres. I can hear him play his guitar on his front porch, an acoustic guitar, not even amplified. I can hear the trains. I'm out in the country. I'm up north. I can hear the trains coming by. I can hear them. That's part of country living. I'm not sure. And I think we're getting off track because the sound that we're talking about is a sound that's already allowed. That sound is allowed right now. It's the music that's playing outside the tasting room. What's on the agenda is, do we allow them to put music inside a building? We're already past, from my perspective, we're already past the music outside. That's been allowed for a while. Not sure why we're focusing on that. That's all I have to say.
Sir, I'm going to have to ask that not be part of the discussion, but I, again, appreciate you showing up. Trustee Baum, you still have the floor.
I'm done.
Further discussion on the motion to amend. Can we please have the motion to amend read so that everybody understands what it is?
Amend with additional condition 20 and review the conditional use permit 6 months by this board and then annually.
Separately.
Yeah, as long as there are no complaints, we would not review it annually.
Further discussion, trustee Kaminsky.
Just to clarify, as our community development director mentioned, this would be reviewed anyway on an annual basis.
No, no, it would not.
Just a recommendation.
Condition number 3, it basically establishes a trigger point where if we get a complaint that staff feels rises to the level of, hey, they're operating, or we observe the business operating beyond what we were told it was going to operate at, then we can issue them a notice that we're going to proceed with a public hearing and possible revocation of your CUP.
Okay. And now if we do it on a 6-month basis, starting whenever we want to do this, what, if there are no complaints, why are we doing it? See, the complaints trigger the review. So I'm comfortable with, if there's complaints, it'll trigger a review without having to put more parameters and sit through this in 6 months for potentially hearing the same arguments again. I mean, if there's complaints, then we have to review it. It's a conditional use permit.
Could I respond?
Please.
My only concern is that, are we therefore required to bring to you after we receive one complaint? Or should we accumulate complaints if there's more than one? I think that the time frame makes some sense to me. If it's tied to the seasonal aspect of what goes on, I don't know, frankly, if 6 months from now, if we're going to be right in the middle of the season where outdoor events might be held and music might be an issue, if it's better to wait and do it in the fall.
See,
You know,
I
just-
think that's my concern. 6 months from now, they may not have had a single wedding there. And again, I agree with trustee Baum. The only thing we're approving is the ability to use this barn with music inside.
Extended hours.
Yeah, but inside. Yeah, but that's nothing. That's like you or me living in our house. You know, so I mean, I guess it's not that I don't agree that we should have a review period. 6 months, I think, is way too soon. You know, you book weddings a year in advance, I mean, at least. And so I'm hung up on the 6 months, and if it's 6 months is in it, I can't support it.
Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Opposed, raise your hands. Motion fails. Back to the motion. Further discussion. Trustee Rick Miller.
I just had a question on item, condition 11, I guess. The CUP can only be transferable to an immediate family member. Is that typical on a CUP? Are they all over the board, or how is that usually handled?
It's not typical, but we have done it in the past. For example, the tattoo parlor CUP that we mentioned earlier, that was one where we had a requirement that operator, if he were looking to sell the business, the new owner would have to get a new CUP. In this case, we're giving an allowance for it to be passed on to a family member. We're aware that there's a family member involved in the operation. But it is a condition that can help ensure that the operation that we've been promised will operate as such into the future, and that it isn't handed over or sold to somebody else who has different ideas or plans or different tastes in music, and or events. So that's the purpose for this. If it needs to be rephrased or something, we can address that, you know, tonight if need be. But that's the reason for it.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Jan Miller.
I want to make a comment on number 11 as well. It says the conditional use permit shall be transferable to an immediate family member only. Wouldn't we want it to be, wouldn't we want it to open it to anyone that perhaps a family member would not be interested, but we'd want the list of CUP to be transferred and applied to anyone that buys this business?
So just so I understand, so what you would then be open to is to have it be in perpetual, no matter, so once it's approved, it's always being approved, no matter who he sells it to? Or whoever the business is transferred to, without having to go through another conditional use review process?
I don't, I think, well, perhaps. But I think that isn't it too limiting, Brian, that I mean, we only had one other example in the whole
Well,
village
I
of
think that
Germantown.
was at least the point, is that it is limiting. That oftentimes with uses that are potentially problematic, you know, certainly, you know, something like this, you know, sometimes bars, although bars aren't conditional use permits typically, you know, depending on where they're located, you know, tattoo parlor, those types of things, that what often happens is you get the initial guy that comes in with the proposal and is very committed to the vision that he has. The next person that comes in, you know, as an outsider, you know, may share components of that vision, but may not have that same level of commitment to follow through on some of the requirements that are there. So you restrict the transfer of the CUP in those circumstances, not to say that the next person couldn't come in and seek their own CUP to lay out what what their operation will look like, but to just make sure that they're coming in and going through that process so that we get the buy-in from them at the front end to say, this is my plan, this is how I'm going to operate, instead of trying to shoehorn what their vision is into what the prior guy's vision was, if that makes sense.
Can I add a little bit to that? It's a nice clause, and we talked about this a couple years ago also. Does Old Germantown have that clause? Same type of business, family-owned, farm property, kind of out of the ordinary, and I don't believe they have that in their CUP. And if you want to reword it, that if we ever get sold and my family doesn't want to take it over, that the new guy has to guarantee he's going to continue to operate it as it currently is CUP'd, pays the fee, and give it to him. I think it could be reworded a little bit differently, so it's just not where he's got to go through the torture chamber to try to continue operating. Like I say, I'm kind of like being discriminated against, and it's kind of unfair.
Mr. President?
Jeff?
I would simply point out that each conditional use permit that we issue is based upon the specific circumstances and characteristics of the proposal and the potential impacts that are identified. We didn't have a similar outcry with regard to the Old Germantown proposal, and we do not have that same requirement in there. But this particular requirement started with staff, and staff felt it was important enough to include in the CUP, and the Plan Commission has effectively ratified that and has included it in their recommended list of conditions.
So your staff recommended this
I did, yes.
because of what incident?
Not with regard to any particular incident, but in anticipation of and in light of the public reaction to the proposal, the potential for the noise impacts, given the relative location, 383 feet away to the neighbors to the east. We heard this evening, although it was not an official complaint to the village, it was a complaint registered with the property owner from a nearby resident. So those are circumstances or characteristics of the proposal that were sufficient for me to want to include this type of condition.
I think it's also telling that every time this particular applicant has been before this body, we have had a discussion very similar to the one that we've had this evening about the various conditions and terms, and it's been an extensive discussion. We didn't have that with Old Germantown. It was just approved. And so, I think that history is part of what drove staff to make that recommendation, that, we want to get ahead of potential problems instead of letting them pop up and then create problems. It's not to say that the next person couldn't run the same business when they come in. It's just that we want to make sure that we're getting them on the front end instead of them coming in and saying, oh, you need to approve this because I've made this investment into the community, and, it's unfair now that I'm being held to the standard that they would have known about. It's recorded. The CUP is recorded. They would have been aware of it. But that will be the argument that we get if you don't have that type of restriction, is that you need to approve my change, whatever it is, because I've made an investment and I didn't know.
Trustee Nyrider.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've been going around here for almost 2 hours and reviewing many things from the review process, hours of operation. Does this transfer to family or not? And several other things. I would like to make a motion at this time that we put this back to the Planning Commission and have them review our points here, and at some time have it come back again to the village board.
I second that.
Are you making a motion to postpone or to table and send it back to the Plan Commission?
Table and put it back to the Planning Commission.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Opposed, raise your hands. Motion fails. Back to the original motion. Further discussion. Trustee Myers.
Are we, the motion on the floor, is that for permit 01-13?
Yes, the original motion is on the floor.
So it's just that one, not the other one?
It's for the new one for 2-2. The 13 is the previous conditional use.
So we're only making one vote tonight on this subject matter for B. Is that correct?
B is the approval of the conditional use permit number 05-2022 with all conditions as listed.
And that's the motion is on the floor, and only one vote for new business B. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's no amendments. All amendments failed to date.
I'll call for the question.
Motion made to call for the question and seconded. Any discussion on that? That's too
Just a
bad.
vote.
That's too bad. We're losing sight here, but all those in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. You're opposed to calling a question? Okay, it's 4-5, loses. Roll call vote.
Trustee Baum. Trustee Jan Miller.
Call for the question. Yes.
This is the main motion. The call for the question passed. Yes.
Main motion. Aye.
Trustee Hudson.
Nay.
Trustee Kaminsky. Trustee Rick Miller.
Aye.
Trustee Myers.
Aye.
Trustee Nightrider.
Aye.
Trustee Pieper.
No.
President Walter.
Nay, only because there was further discussion to be had.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I can't make any other comment after that, but we lost sight on that one. Motion passes, sir. Thank you for coming, and thank you all for coming tonight and for your input and for your statements. I appreciate it very much. Trustee Baum. Oh, you're right. Go ahead, make a motion.
It's 4 conditions.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Myers.
I'm a little confused, Mr. President, because
Sure.
I called for the question and then we should have had a vote.
We did.
Now we end up voting on the motion that's on the floor.
No, sir, I would say that we called the question and we did vote. We did a voice vote on that, and it was 5-4. You won.
I want to stop discussion
And call the question, correct. And then we did.
and then we vote on the.
And we did. We did roll call then, sir.
I'm sorry, then I voted, I want my reconsideration because that's not what I thought. I'm sorry.
I did that last time.
I'll second that.
Motion, did he vote in favor?
Yes.
I seconded Dennis.
We are voting on the question
You
only.
voted to approve the conditional use.
No, that's not what,
Dennis, you
Brian
called
put in
for the
input.
question and we voted on the question, to call the question. We voted on that. We did a voice vote.
voice vote. I
It
need
was
to have Brian-
5-4. And then we did a roll call on the actual motion. That's what call to question means. You're asking for the vote. And first we get to vote if we want to ask for the vote, which we did, and then we did the vote.
My understanding, Mr. President, is when you call for the question, you stop any more discussion.
That's
and
true.
Then you have, and then you take a vote on the motion to stop the question. And then you take the motion
Right.
that's on the
And there
floor
was,
to
Trustee
vote.
Myers, there was a vote on both. We had a vote on the motion to call the question, and there was a vote on the motion then that was subject to that passage. If you wish to change your vote at this point, just as happened last meeting, you would need to make a motion to reconsider that vote. However, there is another motion that is pending at this time, and so you would not be able to do that because that motion takes precedence.
But you can after,
I can do at another meeting, but that's not what.
at the next meeting, or you could still do it at this meeting. Right now, the current motion is to approve the bed and breakfast with the 4 conditions.
Now with,
I want to give numbers, but yeah, there's 4 on here.
right, but with that said, Trustee Baum,
Yeah.
the conditional use permit 5-2022 encompasses all of the components of that proposal. There is no additional section or document to approve.
Even though I called out only 1 through 22 in my motion.
All 22 are inclusive of the event venue, the parking lot expansion, the hours of operation, and the short-term rental. This is a compilation of everything that the Plan Commission,
Okay,
it
if it's all in one, then
was all in one.
Does it need the second, so you remove your motion?
my motion, yeah.
Trustee Myers? No motion to reconsider?
I thought you said, oh.
You can now. You got to give him his option.
Second.
It's gone. Thank you, David.
Motion made to reconsider the vote on the conditional use permit.
Yes, sir.
Discussion on that motion. Trustee Myers, explanation of why you want reconsideration?
To this committee because of that mistake. I'm
Okay.
sorry in regard to it, but
Further discussion.
I don't have any more.
My further discussion, since we've opened it back up, is we lost our way a little bit. This came to us within the last year or so, and the reason it was voted down last time was because it was proposing a commercial entity within a residential district. And whenever we've done that in the past, we've had issues, constant complaints, and one entity of the residents against the business. I have no problem with Mr. Benke's business overall. I think he is a great amenity to Germantown. I think people enjoy your business tremendously, and you've done a fantastic job. Your attention to detail is noticeable. Your venue of the bed and breakfast is another addition that would be a great amenity to Germantown. But once you welcome residents into your area and then want to put a commercial around it, I have a little bit of a hesitancy about it because of what we've heard. They didn't know that this was coming. So now you're expecting one thing and you're selling another. So that's, I think, why it didn't pass last time. But this time you have a different board, you have a different motion coming forward. So it's been discussed out. It's been, heavily conditioned in regards to how it can operate, and it's put to the board for the test. So that was what I wanted to bring the board back to, is that's where you need to think about. Do you want this commercial business in a residential area? Also, what one resident said all of a sudden resonated with me when he said, you are now in your rural preservation area where this is designated as undesirable. And I'm going, well, damn, you're right. And I apologize for the damn, but you're right. And we worked hard for a reason to make that rural preservation, but in Jeff's defense, it can be acceptable under a conditional use. That's the purpose of conditional use. So you have to decide if that's acceptable to you. And when you consider this vote. So that would be my only other additional comment. That's correct.
To reconsider?
Yes.
That's the motion on the floor.
The motion.
Any other
is to-
discussion on that?
Uh,
Trustee Chan Miller?
I think that the area has evolved and it is agricultural. You're blending agricultural with a venue. And it's not the Holiday Inn that's next door. It's a little barn. He's got to rent it out, and there's no liquor. It's, all the music has to be inside. And let's be clear, there are 20 in the barn, the music's inside. Dennis, the music that happens.
Please be civil.
Yeah, I've had enough tonight. Anyway, I think that the property is there. I heard two opposed. I heard 3 people come up here and say that it was a great idea. So if Germantown is going to evolve, why don't we try it out? There is enough conditions in here that if something, the neighbors are covered. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion in regards to the reconsideration? No other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Myers.
No.
What?
Say it again.
All right.
We're voting to approve this or not? approve?
No, this,
Reconsider, sir. This is your vote for reconsideration. What is your vote, sir?
Yes.
Thank you.
Trustee Hudson.
Aye.
Trustee Baum. Trustee Kaminsky. Trustee Jan Miller.
Nay.
Trustee Rick Miller.
Nay.
Trustee Nightrider.
Nay.
Trustee Pieper.
Aye.
President Walter.
Aye. Motion fails 5-4. Stands as before. Motion passed. You have your conditional use, sir. Thank you. New business, item C, denial of operator license for Catherine Reiser.
Make a motion to approve the denial.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve the denial of the license for Catherine Reiser. This was brought forward in the Public Safety Committee meeting. Trustee Myers, any input?
The vote was to accept the license for this particular person, 3-1.
And was the vote unanimous?
3-1.
3-1, thank you.
Get one thing straight.
Chief Snow.
Thank you. This is not unlike a number of denials that have come before you. This was based solely on a felony conviction that occurred back in this case, 2009, for the theft of movable property. I misspoke in the public safety when I said that would have been a $500 limit. That would be for retail theft. Movable property would be 2,500 or more.
Was there also another DUI charge?
There was a
First
municipal OWI back in 2007.
Okay. And when was the felony charge? 2009?
2009. Yes, sir.
2007 for the other, okay. Motion currently on the floor is to deny the license. Is there any discussion on that motion? Trustee Hudson?
I was the one. So I understand the theory of giving people second chances, and I actually support that. But as part of that, the person has to also take a step forward and tell you why they deserve a second chance. This person didn't show up to the public safety meeting. It doesn't look like they're here now. And if we're not listening to our paid professionals when they make these recommendations, I really question what we are doing. This is an easy vote. This person didn't come to explain how the charges. She didn't show up. And now you want to give her a second chance just because? I don't understand that logic. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion for denial? Trustee Jan Miller?
I voted to not deny the license. I think that we hope that people evolve. I do agree with Trustee Hudson. I would have preferred to have somebody there. But in other cases, someone has always showed up. So, but I would like to give her a chance, or them. Or
Okay.
whatever they are.
Thank you. Further discussion, Trustee Hudson?
You can't say you agree with me and then vote in the opposite way. That's not, that logically doesn't work. So
I think she explained it herself as to why. Further discussion on the motion for denial? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Opposed, raise your hands. 2, motion passes. Denial of operator license approved, so it's been denied. Next item is item D, the 2023 non-union merit pool. Village Administrator. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, and I've, Aaron Hearn is here to help answer any questions, but I'll just give a quick overview. This was an item that was presented to General Government and Finance at their last meeting. It is, we're asking for approval of some elements of the merit pay system for the end of 2022 to take effect in 2023. The village board approved in the 2023 budget funding for a 2% pool for merit pay adjustment to base salary base increases. So that's already been approved. What's before you here tonight is number one, if you look on the memo within the packet, it includes a grid that would provide what pay increases would be available depending upon individual merit scores to the base as well as to the one-time bonus. So we would be asking for approval for that table from the board, and as well as allocation of $200,000 from the 2021 year-end surplus for one-time bonuses that would be part of the merit pay system as well. So this was forwarded to the village board from General Government and Finance without recommendation. At this point, both I and the Support Services Manager are available to answer any questions you might have.
Board?
Point of order, Mr. President.
Point of order, yes, sir.
I'd like to be excused, please.
Sure. Are you all right, Dennis?
Yes and no.
Okay, thank you. Are you able to make it home okay? All right, thank you. Questions? Trustee Kaminsky?
More of a comment, I think, than a question. Looking at the max one-time bonus scale, how do we come up with that?
This is, it's basically the same scale that we used last year. Actually did reduce the maximum somewhat because we didn't really approach those in the past. Looking at what actual awards were and kind of narrowed that down.
My comment on this would be that let's say, for example, somebody got the 5.5%. Then they're at that salary level, because this isn't a bonus, right?
No, that would be for the 5.5%.
Just a bonus?
Be only the one-time bonus. It would not be built.
It would not affect
Correct.
their that was my concern, if it affected the scale.
Right.
But if it doesn't, but even then, 5.5 seems like an awful lot to me. And I wonder if we shouldn't have some kind of limit on the percent even for a bonus.
The rationale for the 5.5%, and this is where I may ask Aaron to come up and provide some additional information. We looked at what other communities had been providing. The one-time bonus is I'm going to say a little bit out of the ordinary for municipalities. Most municipalities provide whatever they're giving as part of the base pay. This is something that we developed as part of our merit pay system several years ago, and we did it because we really didn't have enough funding to provide a lot of differentiation in the base pay. And I guess if you look at the 2% pool for the base pay, that does not allow for a great deal of differentiation. So we've allowed a little bit more of an increase on the one-time bonuses so that those employees who are the highest performers would be able to have some a little bit more differentiation from those who are lower level performers. And I think Aaron could provide some other information just on what other municipalities have been giving that we were able to from what we were able to gather.
Do you like me to speak on that?
Sure.
Okay. So yes, last year we had, I think it was about 7.5 was our highest. So we did lower it from then because we do understand, with the budget and everything. But after doing a little research too, only 2 communities from the list of 16 that I've been able to gather within the last few hours were at 2% or lower. Most of them were 2.5 or higher, up to about 6%. So, and the ones that were around the same population as us were about 3 to 5. So that's what we're looking at when we're doing comparisons of communities in the area, and to make our positions relevant to the current jobs in the area. I think it's a good idea to maybe stay within that range. So that's one of the reasons for that bonus section as well.
Trustee Jan Miller.
Okay, I'm looking at your evaluation scores, and then you have the numbers from 0 to 6.5, looks like, on the left column. And then the maximum pay increase correlates with the evaluation score, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then you go to the next column, which is the max one-time bonus.
Correct.
Does it have to correlate?
No, they do not. No.
Okay,
And
then
nor
it should-
have they in past performance evaluations.
Then it should be a separate thing. Then I have another comment. You would like to, well, first of all, when did the ARPA bonus money go out?
I believe that was the end of June.
Yeah, I was
This
going
year,
to say June.
Right.
2022. Okay. In our budget meeting, we determined that we don't have 2021 audited yet. Do you have an update?
The Baker Tilly is scheduled to come on site on December 19th and 20th to do their field work.
Okay. And therefore, we don't have 2022 closed. At the last budget meeting, to the best of my knowledge, some of the budget numbers were either from the first quarter, the second quarter, or year to date. They varied depending on the department, on the
Well,
line item.
2022 will not close until sometime in 2023. Usually the end of January or February is when 2022 books would close. There will be some accounts payable and receivable that will still be processed in January or February. That's typical.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then in our last budget meeting, please correct me if I'm wrong, we said that we are not, or you are not exactly positive about the amount of money that we have in the surplus for 2022 or 2021.
The information that we presented on the 2021 year-end surplus is based upon estimates that were put together by a CPA who was from CLA Accounting, who was working on the village books in cooperation with Baker Tilly. And that was where the number of the $1.1 million surplus came from. And I don't expect that number to change. The reason the audit has not been completed is because those entries from that spreadsheet have yet to be made. And at this point, they're by and large have been made into the MSI financial software, which produces the trial balance that Baker Tilly will review and will conduct their field audit.
Due to the fact that this is my thought, due to the fact that we don't have an audit from 2021, we're going into 2023. I don't feel comfortable giving money off of an estimated 1.1 million. You gave us a list. There were a lot of things on there. Our employees just received the ARPA funds, which was an anomaly. If we want to attract workers and have retention, the whole program needs to be put into the budget. I think it's probably the analogy I have, the same that we can't fund a policeman or a fireman. So if you want to give $200,000 to police and fire, we'll take it. I'm just saying.
But this is
I have
because we can't put that.
And actually, I would say about 2/3 of that money will be going to police and fire.
Of what money?
The $200,000. It's the bulk of our employees. I guess not 2/3, but probably half of that money will be going to police and fire, as they are, our largest departments.
But we're still not adding people.
Retaining them. Further discussion or questions?
I have a question to clarify.
No, okay. Yes, trustee Kaminsky.
Just a clarification. So the 2% merit raise, obviously, if you're not an average employee, you don't get the 2%, correct? You get maybe 0 or you get 1. And the person that might get 0 or 1, you could take that 2% pool and give somebody 3% or 4%. How often does that happen?
It has happened a significant amount of time in the past. I don't have, and I have presented that at the end of each year.
Okay.
I always do bring that back to GGF
But most people are average, I'm thinking. They at least make the average cut. They get the 2 or 3%.
It is, most people do fall around the average. I will say that one of the challenges is the smaller the numbers get, the more difficult it is to get variation. It just is mathematically, it's harder to get variation when you're dealing with smaller numbers.
Okay. And, and I am happy to defer any decision on this, seeing I'm coming into this a little bit cold. And I know it was at GGF. Unfortunately, I missed that meeting. My only real problem with this is, my significant problem, I should say, is I think the bonuses can really skew these things way too high. I mean, for somebody to potentially end up with 10% raise, that is like unheard of. If you think of an average salary of maybe $65,000, $70,000, $80,000, that is like a windfall of cash that we would all like to have. And I don't think that really, I don't know, I have a problem with it. It's too high. I would tap out or top out the maximum one-time bonus at a max of probably 3% of salary. And even that is extremely generous.
Trustee Hudson.
So I need to understand a few things because as is typical, I'm a little slow on the uptick. So Terry just said a 9% raise, but that's not true because it would be a 4% raise plus a 5% bonus, right? And that bonus is just a one-time one-off, correct?
And yes, exactly. And but just so you know too, in order for somebody to get that, somebody else has to get the very minimum. So I mean, you're talking about in order for somebody to get that big of a bonus, I mean, that's highly unlikely unless we're going to be firing that person because that's, I mean,
No, I understand it. I just want
somebody's losing a lot of something.
It is, but you could also take from 5 people to give to 1. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a one-to-one offset, but I guess my question is I agree that we don't yet have the 2021 year-end surplus numbers, and I would like to see those also before we make this decision. I understand that they're coming in the week before Christmas, but Steve, where does that put us for getting the audited 2021 numbers, I guess, is my first question, and there'll be a follow-up too.
As far as when, and there's several stages within an audit. So after the field work, they will submit any follow-up questions that they have. The length of time that takes depends on really what they find during the field work. And then the length of time it takes us to respond to those questions.
Which would be really fast, I assume.
We will respond to them as quickly as we're able to, as we have throughout this entire process. And then I guess part of it depends on when the village board feels that, when do you view the process as being complete? Is it when Baker Tilly schedules the time to appear before GGF or the village board and present their findings?
Is that what has been traditionally done in the past?
They have, traditionally that has been done in the past. It has not happened the past couple of years, I think in part because of COVID.
We've had a pandemic. So is that what we're going back to?
I have not had that conversation with Baker Tilly to see if that's what if they are doing that with their clients at this point.
So is there, I guess, where I'm going with this is there a, does this need to get done tonight? Or, I mean, are we going to have these audited numbers in January or February when we have more knowledge to make this decision?
I'll put it this way. We have been in the process of going through our annual reviews. And part of the value of having a merit-based annual review process is that you're connecting those reviews with the increases. If the board delays this or defers this until at some point in the future, we'll continue forward with the annual reviews.
So we're having annual reviews in early December?
Mhm.
Okay.
And that has been part of the typical process so that pay adjustments are made in January.
I see.
So I guess if the board defers this, we'll continue on with the annual reviews. We will not tie them at this point to pay increases.
So
Why? It's already approved for 2%.
the pay increases are, yeah, it's. Didn't
The
we?
question becomes the bonus.
The pay increases and the bonus are related. And typically, oftentimes the way that they're used is if you have two employees who have similar ratings, one is at the top of the pay scale, the other is at the bottom. You might give the employee who's at the bottom of the pay scale more in their base, and the employee who's at the top of this pay scale more in the bonus. So there
Well,
usually is
I mean, we can talk, I'd love to talk about that sometime, but Bill probably wants to go. So, should we separate these out?
You know what, that was going to be my suggestion. With the 2% is baked because
it's a
it was
done deal.
approved with the budget. The question seems to be more and along the lines of the bonus and how that affects the overall percentage of increase to the salary, which can appear to be skewed in regards to the overall increase for that year for any given employee that would receive the high end of the bonus. So if the sticking point is the bonus, then you go through with the reviews for the merit-based increase. And then the discussion would be, and from what I hear, and I don't want to assume, but from what I hear, the bonuses could be discussed after we have more actual numbers to talk about.
That's, so that, I think that's where I'm going. I don't know whether the surplus is 200,000 or $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that makes a difference as to how I vote on this.
Right.
But
Then
that's me.
there's no motion, right?
No.
So there is no current motion and you're looking for an approval of the non-union merit pool as presented in that grid.
If the desire of the board is to move forward without the one-time bonuses and only with the max, with the base pay merit component, I would, request approval of the first two columns of the chart here, the max base increase for the evaluation score range is listed on the left.
Right, but the point of importance is not that the bonuses won't be considered. The board doesn't want to make that decision until they're firm in the numbers available. So I think it's important to the employees to know that we're going through the merit-based reviews. The review percentage of increase for your raise would be then presented for January, and that could then be established and put into their paychecks. But the one-time bonus, which is usually a separate check anyways, can be reviewed at another time once we have firmer numbers to discuss.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the first two columns.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Kaminsky.
I would just like to reiterate, the motion I was going to make would have been the same as yours, except I would have said with the bonus to be determined later, because I do believe we need the bonus. It's been part of our plan here for compensating employees since we changed over to this system. And I think it's important to have that in there. So I'm going to amend to include that comment that the bonus will be determined hopefully within the first quarter of next year, right? We should have our facts by then.
Right.
That's an amendment. Second the amendment.
Thank you.
Motion made and seconded to amend the motion as presented. Any discussion on that motion to amend? Trustee Chan Miller.
Just to be clear, that means that we're only voting on the first two columns.
That's correct. As part of the merit-based with review.
Mary. We don't.
Right, based against the 2% increase that's been approved by the village board as part of the budget for 2023. Further discussion? No further discussion on the motion to amend? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
No.
None opposed? One opposed? Back to the motion as amended, further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
No.
One opposed. Two, three opposed.
Was the,
And trustee Peeper.
thank you.
Motion passes. New business item E, F, and G are all closed session. First one is discussion of potential negotiating strategy relating to a potential intergovernmental agreement with MSD with respect to the parcel of land located along Goldendale Creek on the west side of Maple Road. Village Board may enter into closed session per Wisconsin statutes 19.85 subsection 1 subparagraph E for deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and then may reconvene into open session to take such action as it deems appropriate. And item F, acquisition of properties at North 116 West 15843 Main Street and at West 157 North 11593 Fond du Lac Avenue. Village Board may enter into closed session per Wisconsin statutes 19.85, subsection 1, subparagraph E, for deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever a competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and then may reconvene into open session to take such action as it deems appropriate. And for new business item G, one moment, administrative performance review process and criteria. The village board may enter into closed session per Wisconsin statutes 19.85 subsection 1 subparagraph C for considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and then may reconvene into open session to take such action as it deems appropriate.
Motion to go into closed session for new business item E, F, and G.
And for those to be
To
included,
be here for E would be, help me out here.
I would, for item E, the village attorney, the community development director, the park and rec director, and the administrator.
And include that in my motion for E and
For F?
for F.
The community development director, the village attorney, and the village administrator.
Include that for F and for G.
I would defer to the trustees who,
So just the village or just the village president, the trustees, and I don't know, Sajak, do you need to be here?
That was part of the request
Sure.
originally.
Yeah, you can be here for item G. We don't have pizza, but
right, that's the motion. Do we have a motion made and seconded? Discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Peeper,
aye.
trustee Baum, trustee Hudson,
Aye.
trustee Kaminsky, trustee Rick Miller.
Aye.
Trustee Jan Miller,
Absent.
trustee Nightrider,
aye.
President Walter.
Aye. Before we adjourn in the closed session, the next regular village board meeting will be on Monday, December 19th at 7 PM here at the Village Hall Boardroom. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all for watching, and have a good night. Please turn off your microphones. We'll take several minutes for the